everyone, welcome once again to another exciting commentary podcast. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And today we are tackling, finally, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Dan and I, a while back, finished up all of the original trilogy, and a lot of people asked us if we would go to the prequels, and we were a little bit on the fence about whether or not we wanted to do these, because, and I think we should just, Dan, put kind of cards on the table right now. Dan and I are in the camp of these aren't the best, and I know that there are some fans of the channel or some fans of these movies that are viewers of ours that have in the past thought we were crazy for not liking these, and of course I guess we're going to talk about some of the reasons why as we go through these, and positives too. Don't get me wrong, but we were a little bit unsure if we wanted to do this, and we had enough interest, and Dan and I decided, you know what, maybe it would be fun anyway. We're going to take the plunge. So we're going to do our level best to have a good time with these and to not just, be really super, super, super mean. But
yeah, I mean, there's some interesting things that I've thought about these movies that I don't think people have said before that we'll talk about when we get into it. I just think these movies, there's some cool lightsaber fights and stuff, and I just don't think the writing's very good.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't think the storytelling's great. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and watch these, and we're going to start, of course, with Phantom Menace, which came out when I was in junior high school and was heralded as, like, the second coming of Christ. I remember my stepdad and I used to make this joke that the new Star Wars movie would solve all your problems. We would, we made these, I wish I still had them, I would post them. We used to make these commercials where it was like, nuclear holocaust got you down, see the new Star Wars movie.
That's awesome. I mean, I can imagine what I've seen footage of some of the movie theaters, people coming out with tickets to it and just like collapsing on the ground crying in excitement that they had a ticket to the new Star Wars movie when they got in the theater. So I would imagine that the excitement, the buzz around it when it was first coming out was immense, and I can't imagine being, that disappointed after being that excited.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit too. This is obviously the most appropriate time for us to do this as we're leading up to Episode 7, and we will have done a commentary on the last Star Wars movie that was made before the brand new one. So that's pretty cool that it's lining up that way. Dan, are you ready to get started, sir?
I think so, yeah.
All right, let's do it. Let's take the plunge. If you'd like to watch the movie along with us, as always, what we do is we record a podcast simultaneously with a commentary track, basically. So you can watch it with us. Grab your DVD or your Blu-ray, what have you. We are watching the theatrical cut, I think. And,
yes, we are. That's what
which one do you have? Yeah, you got the one I've got. Okay, cool. Yeah. So anyway, we're going to watch the theatrical cut. So get your DVD, Blu-ray, however you're gonna watch it. Get it past all the menus and everything. Get it to timestamp 0. Get ready to press play. If you want to listen to us while you're driving around in your car or making your dinner or walking your dog, you can do that. But and we will do our level best to provide some context for you for what we're talking about as we go along. Danny, ready to get started?
I think so, yeah.
Here we go, everybody. Please press play right now.
It's going to be weird not to hear the 20th Century Fox theme in front of the next Star Wars movie.
I know. That's bizarre. Of course, everybody makes fun of that and says, like we'll see Disney, but we don't see Disney in front of Marvel.
That's very true. It'll probably just be the Lucasfilm logo, I would imagine then.
Yeah, they're autonomous. I'm pretty sure, just like Marvel, they're acting pretty autonomously.
Hopefully.
So as I said, this was such a huge, giant deal when it came out. A lot of people never thought they would ever get Star Wars movies again. The fact that they were prequels, I don't think bothered people as much as that kind of thing bothers people now, just because we've had so many kind of lukewarm prequels. Prequels are really hard to make work and make fit and feel like they matter and are relevant. But I remember, I was in junior high, and I remember several kids who skipped school that day and to go see this movie, and were losing their minds that they were getting more Star Wars.
I mean, I probably would have too. And with the opening crawl here, you can tell how different of a movie this is going to be if
already.
it's talking about the taxation of trade routes and like blockades and things. I mean,
Yeah.
Star Wars
It,
was started out. Now that we know, we've seen a little bit of George Lucas's original script adapted into a comic book. We know it was a little. It was trying to be a little bit more political,
yep.
but the original movies didn't have any details about how the galaxy was taxed and trade routes and things like that. It was just kind of a fun action movie, and George Lucas always wanted it to be a little bit more political. So I think that's him getting full creative control is what made it have that kind of stuff in it here.
You look at the original Star Wars and you have that opening crawl, and it's immediately a really interesting, exciting status quo, and you're like, oh man, there's an empire, and people are being oppressed and stuff. The opening crawl for this movie might as well say, there's nothing going on.
Yeah, exactly.
You
I
know,
mean,
it's the status quo is dull, and maybe we'll break it for you at some point.
yeah, I mean, I'm a political science major and like politics and stuff interests me. So like taxation to me could potentially be interesting, like the way it's set up and, if people are getting screwed or whatever, like examining those sort of problems is important. But for a Star Wars movie that's supposed to be like a fun science fantasy thrill ride, for most people that's going to be really dull. For me specifically, that might appeal, but for most people, taxes are kind of a dull subject, right?
Yeah, well, and again, I think it's I don't know. I think it's less about the backdrop and more about the fact that the backdrop is made the foreground. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, like that's that like you said, that's not what people were going to these for. We'll talk about this little bit later with the whole midichlorian thing, but I find myself wondering if George Lucas wasn't trying to like validate Star Wars more by making it more science fiction instead of fantasy. Like he's trying to appeal to the science fiction craze that was really major in the mid late 90s. And it's like, in order to give these more credibility and make them seem like somehow, like deeper, more intellectual, more cerebral, we've got to kind of, infuse it with this kind of stuff. At the same time, as you said, the original Star Wars script had that. So what you got to wonder is how much of the like adventure and sci-fi serial stuff that was heavily homaged in that the original Star Wars was basically just doing came from Lucas, and how much of it came from other people he was working with.
I think all of the aesthetic designs of trying to homage the serials definitely came from Lucas. I've seen interviews with him where he talks about that kind of thing a lot and how those influenced like the look of some of the ship designs like the X-wing and the Millennium Falcon and stuff. But yeah, the way the story was told, I'm not so sure. That's a good point. It might be him trying to make this a little bit more cerebral.
Now, importantly, Qui-Gon here says that the trade dispute is trivial. So the movie is coming out and saying, "Yeah, we realize that this doesn't seem like a big deal. There's something else going on. There's something underlying." And I guess the idea is he's sensing that there's a Sith, and then, oh look, there he is.
Right.
He's sensing that there's something like some dark undercurrent behind this, and that it's going to turn into something a lot bigger. So like you can at least out the gate kind of trust, okay, there's something going on here, and maybe the crawl doesn't seem really exciting because there's just not there's no big status quo break yet. Remember, this is the beginning.
Right.
So
That's
yeah,
fair.
it's important to note that, because I mean, what was cool about the original Star Wars was and we've talked about this. It's like you're in the middle of a thing that you didn't get to see the rest of. It's almost counterintuitive to go back to the beginning just because of what it was.
Yeah, and I mean, the beginning of Star Wars is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, this is the beginning of Darth Vader, but it's not the beginning of the Jedi or the Sith. It's not their origin stories. You would have to go back thousands of years in continuity to tell that story. So you're
Yeah.
kind of still in the middle of it, but it's like the beginning of some of the specific characters for like Obi-Wan and Darth Vader and that kind of thing. Um,
But you're only saying that with your knowledge of the universe on the whole. For anybody that only knows the original trilogy, it sure doesn't feel like there'd be any reason to go farther back than this.
yeah, if you're talking about just those specific characters, I suppose.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you've only seen the original trilogy, you might think, oh, maybe the conflict between the Jedi and the Sith. I mean, they talk about it being an ancient religion in the original trilogy, so I guess maybe that's there. But
Yeah, sure. But it's not like just because there's a lot of back history, we always have to go back and explore it in
yeah,
prequel form,
exactly,
right?
exactly, yeah. Um,
I can make somebody making the same case that a lot of people did with Gotham. This is not where the story is. Like why do we have to go back and see things from Bruce Wayne's parents getting killed onward? Why do we have to go back and actually see Anakin Skywalker become Darth Vader? We know what happens. Is that the interesting part? The problem is you could really make a case for doing that. It's the story of a hero who goes down the dark path. Uh, but now that we've seen it, and I don't think it was handled real well, it's hard to it's hard to say whether or not it should have been done.
right, exactly. At the very least, I think one of the best things about the prequels is I think Lucas cast Obi-Wan really well. I really like Ewan McGregor. I like
I do
what he
too.
does with what he's given. I like Liam Neeson a lot as an actor, and I think with what he's given, he does great stuff with Qui-Gon in this movie. I mean, Qui-Gon's kind of not a character, but I think Liam Neeson plays it well enough for someone that doesn't really have a character. I think Liam Neeson's always charismatic to some
Dan,
degree.
you are no match for Droid to Cuz.
No.
No, you're no match. I don't think you can handle that. They got those shield things, and you just no, it's not gonna work. I think Qui Gon is the quintessential Jedi. I think when you think of a classic Jedi, that's him, and that's the best thing I could say about the character because I think he's supposed to be kind of like the Jedi Order all rolled up into one. But then as
Yes.
far as like who is he really? What are his character traits just beyond he does I guess the right thing according to the Jedi. He follows the rules to the letter. I guess.
And
For the
he
most part.
doesn't though.
I guess he doesn't. Now that I'm saying that, yeah, yeah. Never mind. No, that was dumb. You're right. I guess he actually doesn't do that. Okay. Well, it's hard to get a good sense really of who any of these characters are supposed to be. I think.
Right. And it's the same thing we see Queen Amidala here, and Natalie Portman's an actress I like a lot. And I saw an interview. She came out recently and said that it was really hard for her to get work after this because nobody thought she could act. Because this is one of the first big things she did, and they were like, "Oh, that lady that played Queen Amidala in the Star Wars prequel, she's terrible." And I don't think Natalie Portman's very good in these, not like at all.
And I don't think it's her fault. I think
No, I don't think so either.
the character's written wooden. She played it wooden. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, and especially when we get into Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, the romance between Anakin and her is awful. So it's kind of hard to play because that's kind of the reason she's there later on.
I want to talk about this movie aesthetically for a minute. I love the look, feel, the tone, the atmosphere, the style a lot. I like that it is as distinct of a feel as the original Star Wars was, and it's very, very different, and it should be. And that's the thing that really took me in. And I'm talking this movie specifically. After this, not so much, but this particular movie, I like living in this world and exploring it visually. And
Yeah,
I
I think
think that
Naboo looks really cool.
the CG in this is handled pretty well, is pretty well integrated. I didn't notice the fact that most of it was shot on green screen the way I did 2 and 3, and I'm not sure as much of it was, although I don't know that for sure. I
Yeah,
know
I'm
two
not
and
so.
three was almost just completely all shot on blue screen, but man, when I went and saw Attack of the Clones, there were places where I was almost laughing at how blue screen it looked.
Yeah,
I just couldn't get
and
my mind around. Like this that we're seeing right here with this ship landing. This looks like it's actually going on.
yeah, it doesn't look very very bad at
It's
all.
it's fine. It's fine. And yeah, they did all this stuff in CG that originally they had to actually do models and stuff. And I love all that, and I love the minimalism of it, but like making it look a lot more grandiose than it really is. At the same time, the stuff holds up okay, for like 90, 98, 99.
Oh yeah, definitely. One of the things I wanted to mention, like the main thing I kind of wanted to mention about this movie and the prequels in general, that I think was kind of a misstep, and it's hard to it's kind of hard to get around it, I suppose, because you have the problem of Darth Vader being the most iconic villain of at least modern film history, and that's who you want the movie to focus on if you do Star Wars prequels, right? Because you would think that's where the story would be. I would make
Yep.
the argument that if I was making these movies, I would make them about the Emperor, because he has so many parallels to the story of Julius Caesar, who was first originally elected as a religious leader, just like Sidious says he is. He's the leader of the Sith cult, and then Julius Caesar started a civil war in Rome to consolidate power and appointed himself dictator, just like the Emperor does in the prequels. It's basically Julius Caesar's story in space, and I think if you were to tell the story from his perspective and maybe give a little bit of a justification as to why the empire was formed in the first place, instead of it being just he's evil and wants to consolidate power, that would have been much more interesting. And Darth Vader's kind of like Octavian, Julius Caesar's adopted son, who he mentored and eventually took over after Julius Caesar was assassinated. Like, there's a lot of parallels between that story and what goes on between the two of them, and I think exploring that relationship would have been potentially really interesting. If
I'm
you want
gonna
to make it a political movie, if that was George Lucas's objective, I think that's where I would have gone.
I'm going to comment on what you said in just a minute, but I do have to say I really like Qui-Gon's line, "The ability to speak does not make you intelligent."
Yeah.
I have definitely had conversations with people where I have wished that I could say that. Yeah, Dan. I think a lot of the reason that you're saying that, and I think you're right. I think that if you were going to make a really intelligent kind of rise and fall to power kind of movie, and have a lot of interesting politics. That's how and real politics. That's how you would do it. I also think that you're partly saying that because we're starting before the story really starts. And if you had started this trilogy, and I've always said that there's too much space in between these movies. If you like this does not feel like three acts. This feels like three disconnected movies. Or at the very least, one and two. One just feels superfluous, which is annoying
Yeah.
because I think it's the best of them. I really hate that, but because I feel like this is mostly just let's kind of see what this world looks like well before the Empire, and there's not really a lot of a story here. It's kind of just okay. Well, you got the Emperor, and he's or Palpatine, who's going to become the Emperor, and he's like starting to kind of do some machinations, but like this is all background. We don't need any of this. If they had begun with teenage or in his 20s Anakin Skywalker when he first becomes a Jedi, I don't think you would be saying that. I feel like because I think that immediately is a better story and would almost write itself, at least better than this did. Just starting him when he's a kid, I don't I don't get it. It feels like we're beginning the story before the story actually begins. I also think that you could very interestingly parallel Darth Vader with the Emperor by having him be the really mysterious figure in these who came to power somehow, and you don't really know exactly what happened, but like there's some rumblings and some talking about like what happened to him. And then you have Anakin Skywalker be the Luke Skywalker character, except that he goes in the exact opposite place that he did, where you just tell the same story you did with Luke Skywalker, kind of, except that when you get to the end, he takes the bait and he ends up going down the dark path, right? That's what these should have been, I think.
Yeah, I think you have a point there. I think the reason I am saying if you start with the Emperor, if you need to start here, is because that's where all the interesting story would be.
But you don't need to start here.
Exactly. Um, and I think, I mean, we'll talk.
Here
We can
comes
talk a little
Boss
bit.
Nass. I
Yeah,
love Boss Nass.
he's the special brand of idiot, and we'll talk about him when we get to him. Because I can't tell if Lucas, the script, or he is dumb. But
Yeah, well, we should talk about that in a minute. Go ahead and finish your point, and then I want to get to the Goongas. I'm sorry, the Gungans.
um, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Anakin when we see him. But I think making him the complete opposite of Luke Skywalker in that he's not relatable at all is a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't think, and I guess we should save some of this for later. I'm not sure that making him like a more tragic character from the beginning, where like he has a darker past, is necessarily a bad idea.
No, definitely not.
But anyway, so
But
I
Luke
don't know.
Skywalker kind of had a darker past too. I mean, he saw his aunt and his uncle like charred corpses on Tatooine. Never knew his
That's true.
parents.
Yeah,
Found out
yeah,
his
that's
dad
true.
was the leader of the empire he's trying to fight. Like he had some dark stuff in his past too.
Well, and I think it's easy to forget that with Luke Skywalker because he's an optimist.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Anakin Skywalker thinks the whole world's out to get him, and is just
It's all
like
Obi-Wan's fault.
constantly super melodramatic about everything, blames everything on everybody else, doesn't know how to communicate, all of those things, and I think that we're kind of it's kind of in our face a little bit. He was a slave, and bad things happened to his mother, and you're supposed to appreciate that he goes and murders people because bad thing. Honestly, we didn't see much bad happen to him. The word slave is thrown around. I didn't see it the way the movie I think wanted me to. But I don't know.
Right.
We'll talk about that about all that. The Gungans, kind of interesting, kind of an odd choice that like we're supposed to this is the big species that we do things with it within this, and kind of another I don't know, like sort of primitive looking race, kind of like the Wookiees, kind of like the teddy bears
The
in
Ewoks.
the Ewoks in a Jedi, that kind of thing. I'm seeing a lot of kind of redundancies, not redundancies, but like doing some of that kind of stuff
Similarities.
again.
Yeah.
Similarities, yeah. Derivative.
The Gungans,
Underwater city is a fun idea.
the Gungans, unlike those other cultures, well, they don't really have a culture in this. Like, we don't really examine, like, there's some discussion about how the Wookiees and the Ewoks live in the original trilogy and what, being an Ewok or a Wookiee is like, um, and who these species are. Like, we see the Gungan place, but we don't really, like, inhabit that space and live with them for any time at all, you know? Like, I know what their city looks like and they live underwater, but that's all I really know about them, and that they're kind of dense because they just said that the planet core is just driving through the ocean. And, going through a planet core that'd be like molten lava and you'd get burned up and die.
Yeah. I should have said this earlier. I am gonna do, and I don't know if you've seen these, Dan, but I guess both of us, if we have, I'm gonna do my very best throughout this, not and throughout all three of these, not to just constantly repeat everything Red Letter Media said, but I will quote him every now and again, and I will make sure not to pretend like things that he said are things I'm coming up with. But importantly, I kind of agree with most of what he says, and it's a little bit difficult not to go there. But one of my favorite jokes that he makes is when is in that scene when he says, I kind of figured that when they said planet core they meant the planet core. You're
It's
absolutely right.
really good.
What was that the thing that you thought Bosnias was really stupid about? Is that what you're
Yeah,
talking about?
I've
Yeah.
always thought that was really dumb.
I guess
Uh,
the only other thing that we kind of know about it is what kind of like political system do you think they have? Like what kind of government do they have? Is he a king? Is he elected? Like
I have
they
no
have
idea.
really kind of regal looking like garb, right?
Hmm. I can't remember if they mentioned the name of whatever body of government that they're appearing in front of. They might have mentioned it earlier, but I can't recall.
I would assume it's not a republic because they don't get along real well uh with the human looking people on Naboo. So I would assume that they probably have like opposing governments, but I don't really know.
Well, and
Like opposing forms of
Naboo
governments.
has a monarchy sort of too, because
Oh,
they
that's
got
true.
Queen
They do.
Amidala.
Yeah, that's true. Then why did I think it was a republic? I don't know.
I can't remember it because we saw those official government officials in the palace earlier, but I can't remember if they mentioned what their titles are. Because it might be like, um, England or something where there's a ceremonial monarch and,
See, that's
the
what I
king.
thought was going on. I thought they called it a republic at some point, but I will admit it's been a little while since I've seen this. But honestly, let's kind of draw back and just admit, Dan, that this kind of stuff's what this movie's about, right?
Yeah, and that's,
That,
um,
if you're not watching with us, we've got the water monster chasing the bongo. The bongo. I mean, nobody plays it like a drum, but they call it a bongo. And it's about the action, and importantly, the original Star Wars movies were action driven too, but you cared about the characters and they had dimension to them.
exactly. I feel like we sacrificed character dimension completely. And the battle droids in these movies, a lot of people make a complaint that I don't necessarily agree with because I think
Okay.
people remember the stormtroopers a little bit more fondly than they should. I mean, people complain like the battle droids pose no threat to the Jedi except for the droideka. They cut them down like butter. And George Lucas is quoted as saying that when he toured this footage of him saying that with Steven Spielberg. He toured the set and he was like, "Yeah, Jedi cut them up like butter." And a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's really stupid. Why would you make enemies that were completely unimposing and pose no threat to the people that are the protagonists?" Well, like the stormtroopers weren't the greatest at what they did either. They couldn't hit anything. They were all pretty incompetent. Rebels makes fun of that all the time. I mean, I don't know. You see what I'm saying?
No, I completely agree with you. I'm sorry, I was distracted because I was thinking about the fact that Queen Amidala's dress looks like it has pumpkin bombs in it.
It's all for you, Amidala.
But yeah, I mean, like, okay, so like we've got a Senate and stuff, but I guess it's like a galactic Senate. So is it like we've got this galactic government, and then you have these planetary governments that are under it? So like she
Yes.
has a monarchy, but then it's like a galactic republic that has other kinds of governments inside of it.
The Galactic Republic, it's kind of like the way the
Is that
federal and state governments work in the United States. There is a government that has jurisdiction over the entire galaxy, which the Jedi are work for and are the peacekeepers of. And then each planet has its own separate government, like the states have their own government. And they don't necessarily have to all be the same type, but the Galactic Senate is where everyone goes and has representation and votes on galactic-wide issues.
okay? So can we agree that some of this stuff here they built that like it's not all a green screen?
Yes. Naboo has a kind of a cool look. It looks like a, Renaissance era Mediterranean city like in Italy or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Complete with body of water surrounding it, and those kind of boats that people ride around in.
Yeah, it's kind of like Venice.
It's like Venice. I was gonna say that, except that it doesn't look as dirty and old and kind of creepy like Venice can at night. At
That's true.
night, especially.
Yes. I'm kind of disappointed that Liam Neeson dies in this movie and didn't get to be in the later movies. I feel like Qui-Gon and Maul were potentially the more interesting characters introduced here,
Yeah,
and they killed both of them.
and they could have had this great rivalry.
Yeah, like I know, like don't get me wrong, I like Ewan McGregor, and if Obi-Wan got more to do, he would be the Jedi character other than Anakin I would want to focus on primarily for sure. Um,
Wow. He's so young
but
here. We should mention this. You look at Ewan McGregor, and he looks really super young here. You, I think, as we're recording this, I think just last weekend, Taken 3 came out. You look at Qui-Gon here, and he looks the exact same age
yeah,
as anything that you see Liam Neeson in now. He has not changed at all.
yeah, Liam Neeson aged really well. He's like in
Like,
his 60s and he's playing these like ultra masculine like action hero roles. No, nobody else can do that really besides
no, man.
Stallone. There's very few
That's
actors that can do that kind of thing.
there's nothing against Harrison Ford or anybody, but like he's in his 60s and he kind of starting to look it, but
Yeah.
he doesn't look any different than he ever has. He's got that in common with Patrick Stewart, man. Like
Oh
like they
yeah.
they both have aged really super well. Like Patrick Stewart is only just now starting to look a little bit old, like he's coming into his age. Although I think with some people, and maybe Liam Neeson is like this with some actors, and I guess just people in general, because actors are people, right? I think there's this thing that happens sometimes where they look a lot older than they are, and then they just like kind of perpetually stay in that look for like decades, because Patrick Stewart, I think, looked like he was in his 50s when he was in his 30s, but then he never changed that look,
Yeah.
and he just always looked like that. I think Liam Neeson has that.
Oh
We
yeah,
should
for
talk about
sure.
Jar Jar.
Yeah, Jar Jar. I don't know. He's not as annoying as some people make him out to be. I don't think. I think he's relatively harmless. I don't love him or anything. I don't think he's funny. Like the expectation of the audience in this movie is to think Jar Jar's hilarious. But I don't think he doesn't grate on my nerves like the way some people say that he does.
Yeah, he never used to, and then and then people started explaining like why they didn't like him, and there were certain things that just once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. The big thing with Jar Jar for me is I don't think you should have the original comic relief characters from Star Wars in this movie if you're going to have a new comic relief character who's in almost every scene.
Right. That's what
I
I was gonna say. Like
yeah.
if C-3PO and R2-D2 weren't in this movie, maybe he's warranted because they were kind of the bumbling idiots, lovable bumbling idiots in the original trilogy. But if you have them in here, he doesn't really serve any sort of purpose.
Yeah, and with C-3PO, and I mean I guess this is a thing that happens later, so I maybe it's not fair to complain about it because people hated Jar Jar so much they just quit using him and just like gave him cameos.
Hmm.
But like C-3PO they put like in mortal peril and you kind of felt bad for him in places, and like Jar
Yeah.
Jar there's just nothing really to grasp onto. He is literally nothing but comic relief. When it's like, and I think it's laid on too thick. It's like I got banished for being clumsy. We're like, wow, we're gonna go so far as to not just have a bumbling idiot, but make the fact that he's clumsy like a major plot point. Okay, I don't know. It's kind of juvenile writing, and what's really sad is it's written. Maybe this is horrible for me to say, but it's written like we got a writer here who's never written anything before.
Hmm.
A lot of rookie mistakes, a lot of padding, a lot of we don't really know what we want to do with this. We kind of just got to get the ball rolling. And I don't know. It's not it's certainly not what people wanted. It's certainly not what people
Right.
were expecting. And that doesn't make it bad. It's just what they were expecting was not replaced with something really exciting.
I
Darth Maul's
really,
look is inspired.
yeah, I was gonna say I really like Darth Maul's introduction there, where he just comes in the hologram. Uh, Darth Maul was one of my favorite Star Wars characters as a kid, just because he looked cool, and I loved the idea of the double-bladed lightsaber. I thought that was one of the coolest ideas. When I first saw him turn on one side and then the other as a kid, I was like, "That's the coolest thing ever." Um, but he doesn't like. I've since went back, obviously, and have thought about the movie other than just enjoying the action when I was a kid. And he doesn't have a character. He has like one line of dialogue where he says, "Finally, we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last, we will have revenge." And that's all he really does. He's just kind of a plot device to go and hunt down the Jedi.
Yeah, now I want to suggest that that's fine if you don't kill him at the end,
Yeah, potentially.
and there potentially. And the reason I'm saying that is because I mean, yeah, Darth Vader was more compelling even in the original Star Wars. You knew there was something going on with him,
Hmm.
and you didn't know what, but there still was, and he was a different kind of menacing. But there still was, he didn't just kind of stand there and have a creepy face, and then be really good at fighting. He force choked people, and he was like he was ruthless, right? So there were reasons beyond just his look to really be excited about him even before they started doing a lot of character stuff. At the same time, what he has in common with Darth Vader is he's like
Mysterious.
he seems like a force of nature. He seems completely unfeeling. He seems like completely ruthless. He'll do anything to get a job done, and he doesn't. But what I'm saying is he's not supposed to be a person, a character. He's supposed to be kind of force of nature, and then maybe we can flesh him out and figure out who he is and what he's about. But I guess the other thing is you're starting with Palpatine, and then you bring in the apprentice. Whereas in the original Star Wars, you didn't know there was anybody necessarily above Darth Vader.
Right, exactly.
Or at least, like, it was so in the background, once you were told that, you had to keep reminding yourself about it. Like, he was the face of the Empire. This guy is more like pet who gets left off, who gets dropped out of his leash and sent off to go to go sick his prey.
Yeah, exactly. And in expanded universe things after this, they've kind of portrayed that um, as being his purpose to Darth Sidious, and they've done interesting things character-wise with that kind of relationship where Darth Sidious just
Sure.
views him as a tool. And I think that would be cool to have in this movie to some degree, but I don't know. I'm just it's kind of like the Boba Fett thing where like that design is so cool and then they did great things with him later and he became a really well fleshed out character. And I've always wanted them to do more with Darth Maul. They're kind of starting to do that now with the Clone Wars stuff. I just didn't really care for the direction they went with it ultimately.
When I was a kid, that look was enough, just like you said.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just really it's haunting. It's visceral. It's creepy, and it immediately makes your imagination kind of run away with itself, which is what I really like about it. And that's why I say don't kill him off at the end. Like give us exactly what you gave us with him, and then like let him do stuff later on. Because after all, until you get to three, are we really doing very much with Palpatine at all, except for just some like background backdoor maneuvering and like really obvious stuff?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think there was room for it. Don't don't have Grievous and let him stick around.
And
You
yeah,
know,
and
like
importantly, don't have Dooku because
don't have Dooku.
as much as I love Christopher Lee, I thought Dooku was much less interesting than Maul by virtue of they had the same level of characterization. Just Maul looked much cooler, you know?
Now, in the spirit of full disclosure, I do feel the need to admit something that everyone's going to totally make fun of me about, and that is when I was a kid and this movie came out, I amassed a Jar Jar Binks collection.
Oh, really?
Hmm. I
That's
had
funny.
quite a bit of Jar Jar stuff, and I don't know what came over me, and I plead insanity now. But back then, for some reason, I latched onto that. I don't know why. I can't even tell you now.
That's
So
funny.
when you said you don't think that he's as annoying as everybody else makes that out of me, clearly I didn't, because I bought Jar Jar, and I don't know. I'm not sure to be perfectly fair, if it was I thought he was a really funny character, or if I thought it was just so ridiculous that he got so much screen time that I like became such a fan of just like the ridiculousness of it. You know what I mean? Like it's so bad it's good or something. And then I bought that. So I honestly can't remember really what my motivation was. I have since sold all that stuff, but anyway.
I can't believe they had an Anakin this young hitting on a girl that much older than him. It's just very strange. Like when you think about that, that's how their relationship began. Like Anakin made a move on her at this age. It's just very weird to think about.
When he's just 9 and she's 14. It kind of sets everything up and tells you everything you need to know about later on. Like this is one of the most consistent things about their, you know what I mean? Where like he just likes her because she's pretty and that's it.
Yeah.
And like later on, their relationship makes perfect sense when this is both the first contact and the foundation. Hit the nose.
Yeah, it's
Oh, okay. See, doesn't he seem like a totally mistreated slave, Dan?
I mean, there is the thing of he is used by Watto to make money off of pod racing, which is extremely dangerous, and he could be killed in any race at any time. Um,
Could we see him get hurt once, or could we have a story about how he got hurt once?
I mean,
Could we
yeah,
could we get that? No, yeah. The problem is there's a lot of concept over execution in these movies. We're told a lot of stuff. We don't
yeah.
see it. Yeah, don't tell me it's dangerous. Show me how dangerous it is. And for characters I care about, I don't care that we see a couple of pod racers get blown up in the pod race scene. Those are random characters that were created to get blown up in the pod race scene.
Right.
We didn't have. I wasn't supposed to like be afraid for Luke's life at the beginning of Empire because he might freeze to death. I was afraid for him because he was freaking freezing to death.
Yeah, exactly.
Break this kid's arm or something. That's all I'm saying.
Captain Logan advocates breaking the arms of children.
I do. In a fictional
I
context
know. I'm just
where I'm
kidding with you.
supposed to care about this kid, and this is another writing 101 thing, Dan. There was a thing that a professor of mine told me when I was in writing school that I vehemently disagreed with then, and I vehemently disagree with it now. And this is a guy who otherwise almost always agreed with, and he was a mentor of mine, and like I quote him all the time. But you know what he said?
What do you say?
He said that that child protagonists are inherently sympathetic. I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that either.
I don't even agree with that. I don't agree with
What
that
if
even a
it's a
little bit.
bratty child?
Yeah, and I think that George Lucas, when he wrote the script, relied on that. It hinges on we're supposed to care because he's a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Children are innocent. They can't take care of themselves. They are inherently sympathetic. No, I don't think so. And I think that that's supposed to be the kind of the plot's protection from having to actually put him in any kind of danger or anything. And I'm not saying that characters immediately become sympathetic just because you break their arms. But at this, but all I'm saying is I need more of a sense of how terrible his life is if I'm supposed to buy how dark he gets before he's even really tempted by the dark side.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
that's all I'm saying. I don't know. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well enough, but that's how I feel about it.
No, you want to see him grapple and struggle with something and give a reason as to why um, he has that darkness inside of him. I definitely agree with
See,
that.
importantly, he is remembered in the original trilogy, which of course takes place after this, as being the greatest hero that the Empire, or I'm sorry, that the galaxy has ever seen.
Hmm.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
he was this great hero that sadly went down the dark side. I'm not saying that he can't have a dark side to him. Everybody does, and that like he kind of had to pick one at one point, and then later on he ended up going down the dark side. What I see with this character, especially past this movie, especially from Attack of the Clones on, is a guy who is kind of always embracing his dark side. I never see that heroic, greatest hero the galaxy's ever. I never see it.
Right, and importantly, when you compare him to Luke Skywalker, we see the struggle with his dark side. He has a light side and a dark side within him, and we see him ultimately choose the light side and embrace that side of him. And he's heavily tempted in Empire. That's why that movie is held up as the best of the movies because that struggle is interesting. Um, the movie kind of acts like he's made up his mind after the Phantom Menace that all right, it's dark side time, guys, and and we're just waiting for him to put the costume on, get his arms and legs chopped off, you know?
There is this really cool poster. Yeah, it's funny I said arm breaking earlier because there's just always people getting their arms and legs chopped off in Star Wars. There was this really neat poster that I think really kind of sums up a lot of the problems I had with this movie. When this came out, and I had it. It's Anakin Skywalker here on Tatooine walking in front of one of those walking in front of one of those huts, and the shadow behind him is a Darth Vader shadow,
Oh, cool.
and it's really cool looking. But the problem is the movie doesn't really do much at all with them, right?
Right.
It's just that poster was just okay. This kid's gonna become Darth Vader, right? You know what I mean? Like there's not really anything establishing like who, and again maybe it's just because he's too young. He's not really a person yet,
The
right?
problem with this movie is it doesn't have a protagonist and no one has a character arc. Nobody makes any
That's it.
discovery about themselves and changes or decides to not change by the end of the movie.
Yep. Yeah, there's really there's no opportunities for change. Naturally, of course, and I mean like we can go down the obvious list that everybody always goes to, but the whole Anakin builds C-3PO and R2-D2 thing again, classic misstep for prequels, right?
Hmm.
Isn't it like clever and cute that Darth Vader built these things? Well, it doesn't really make any sense because I don't know why C-3PO is a translator.
Yeah, exactly.
And B, it just seems too easy. And then after this, they just always show up everywhere really super easily.
It
Anyway,
the thing with these movies is they have like a huge emphasis on like destiny and the prophecy thing with Anakin and bringing balance to the Force. Where the original movies, there was always the like Force as an ancient religion thing and it bound the universe and stuff, but it wasn't like Luke had some predestined path and we were just watching it play out like a puppet show in front of us, you know?
and importantly, the original, it's almost like we're watching movies based on another set of movies and it just doesn't understand them, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, when we get into Yoda and stuff, there's a lot of other reasons to say that. But to your point, what we I love this soundtrack. To
Yeah.
to your point though, when you've got the Emperor in the original trilogy talking about destiny, he is using that as a tactic.
Yeah.
It isn't that people don't have choice, it's how easy is it to make people do a thing by trying to make them think that they don't have a choice. When you say your life would be much easier if you would just simply embrace your destiny. At that point, you don't isn't it convenient? You don't have to worry about responsibility. Nothing's your fault. You can just chalk everything up to destiny.
Right.
And it's a really easy philosophy where you say, well, my natural course, if I just don't try very hard at anything, and I just let. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good life lesson, right? And I just let my instincts take me wherever they're going to take me. It's my destiny. I can't be faulted for it. And so I just think that the whole destiny thing in the original trilogy is a tactic on the Emperor's part.
I think so too, and I think if you were to remove the prophecy thing from these movies and the very obvious and gratuitous, Jesus allegory thing where he doesn't have a father, he was like born of the Force of or whatever. Um, how sympathetic would Anakin be if you watched him earn his place as the greatest hero the galaxy has ever seen, while having the same threshold, starting at the same threshold as everyone else in the Jedi Academy. Like
Of
Obi-Wan is
course.
his master, and he is just so much better at what he does than everybody else. And he doesn't have any sort of special privilege or anything like that. He's just good at what he does, and he's sympathetic because he's good at it. It would be all that much more tragic to see him fall.
Yeah, when you get to the end of this trilogy, what you want to do is like Anakin Skywalker so much for all the wonderful things that he did for the galaxy, for the Jedi Order, and all of that, and then tear the heck up when he chooses to go the other way.
Yeah, exactly.
It is important that we believe that he could be corrupted that way, and that it doesn't happen in like a light switch, and that it's gradual. And it's also important that we resist it, that it hurts us so bad to see it happen. And I just don't like this character all the way through.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you see him in Revenge of the Sith, like about to slaughter the younglings in the Jedi Temple, you're like, well, I don't
Seems
feel
like
like
a
that's
thing
that
he'd do.
far-fetched for that guy, you know?
Yeah, well, he's just so ultra super selfish. I mean, I think one of the, and I guess we should save all this, but I guess I'll say this real quick. That like, is this a character that it really makes sense to? Because like, shouldn't he be the quintessential Jedi? Like
Yeah.
before he goes to the dark side, does it make sense that he resists the Jedi's values and the way they do things all the way through? Like he never buys into any of it. It doesn't seem.
Yeah, exactly. To your point before when you were talking about this isn't the place to start telling the story, I think you could have potentially started the story in episode three and then make the movies about like the subsequent movies about the Clone Wars and not do like an animated show that kind of tells all of the story about Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship between them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Because
Oh
when you
yeah, so
think
you're
about it,
saying yeah, so you're saying make episode three the entire trilogy.
well, not
Is
even.
that
Just
what
like
you're saying?
start with the status quo at the beginning of three, where the Clone
Yeah.
Wars are going on. Like there's a war going on at the beginning of the original trilogy that we don't see the beginning of,
Yep.
and your Obi-Wan is his master, Anakin's his apprentice to some degree. He's almost a full Jedi Knight at that point. They're really good friends, and you see them just doing stuff in the Clone Wars and trying to win the war for the Republic.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying is that you're advocating basically taking the status quo at the beginning of three and then just taking that movie and basically making it three movies.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
we actually get to see the Clone Wars.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and you have a focal character throughout all of it. I mean, like, I don't really feel like throughout these that Anakin Skywalker is like this brilliant general with this amazing strategic prowess, and like that's the way he was kind of painted
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like
before.
Obi-Wan is a lot smarter than Anakin in the prequels, and Obi-Wan's no smart cookie in the prequels either. I mean, this is the guy that drops down from the rafters and he could assassinate General Grievous, and he goes, "Hello there," so they can have an obligatory lightsaber duel in three, you know? He's not the smartest guy either.
And a lot of this stuff is just kind of long drawn out and boring. I don't know that we needed a 5 minute scene setting up what the bet's gonna be for the pod race scene. And I think it's kind of, there to show Qui-Gon's skills at manipulating people or something. I get. I'm not sure what the purpose of it is, except for plot stuff. It's
Yeah,
not 5 minutes, but it sure feels like it's 5 minutes.
yeah, I was gonna mention like that's probably why we're talking about the other movies over most of the dialogue scenes because there's just not a whole lot going on other than the plot being parroted to us.
Yeah. So this movie.
Obi-Wan right now, like one of the greatest Jedi Knights in the history of the galaxy apparently is sitting on a ship waiting for something to happen. That's that's not the position you want Obi-Wan to be in, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Now, one of the things I think that they're trying to do, to be fair, with Anakin here, is establishing him as like a pure soul. Like he cares about people despite the way he's been mistreated, apparently, and he has these amazing abilities, and I mean, it's basically he's he's basically an X-Men mutant, you know. I mean, he's basic kind of, you know. He's
He's
basically okay.
X-Men Jesus.
He's got superpowers. He's one of the most powerful things in the universe, and he doesn't even know it. We have to make sure that that's cultivated, that like the right values are cultivated in him. Otherwise, he could be really dangerous, and it could be really bad. Some of it I think is a matter again of just not communicating things. I think there could be a lot of weight to that. I think we could really if we have to start here and we have to have this kid Anakin, which by the way one of the reasons I think it doesn't work is just because it's a huge risk to have like a little kid in a role in your main like character role in a movie like this, assuming that he's supposed to be the protagonist, and like that kid's got to be amazing, and I just don't think that this one was. So like, but anyway, couldn't we have like really made that the focus and been like, okay, this kid's had a rough life, but he seems to like be kind of pure in spirit and has like the right idea in the first place. We got to be careful because if he goes too far in one direction, it could be really bad for everyone. That could be really weighty, I think.
It could be potentially. I mean, the first step in making that work, I think, would be introducing your protagonist before an hour into the movie, if that's the direction they were going to go. You know,
That's a excellent point you're making. But I think what's most important right now, Dan, is that we laugh at a cartoon at a cartoon character getting his tongue all numbed up, and
it's just so antithetical to when you think about the way that movies are made, and you don't even have to compare it to the original trilogy, I guess,
yeah,
because
yeah,
you're supposed to introduce the movie through the eyes of your protagonist in the first place, like the world, and that's just how you tell a story. But Luke
sure.
is introduced straight away in Empire. And Leia is the first character that's introduced. But she becomes a main part of the cast later on, and then you get to see Luke pretty early on. It's not an hour into the movie.
Yeah, it just feels like a really detached script, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it just feels like it's written by a person who's like struggling to make things interesting. Famously, George Lucas has talked a lot about how hard these movies were for him to write, and if only he hadn't felt like he had to go it alone. I don't understand that, but he seemed like he like kind of he kind of really like dreaded the writing job. Like that was the hardest part for him. It was like,
Mhm.
okay, we just get that out of the way, get that knocked out, and then I can do the part I'm good at. And then you look at the way these are directed, and I don't know that that was true anymore either, you know. And I mean, Lucas fans are gonna hate me for saying that, but that's just I'm calling it like I'm seeing it, you know. It just seemed like he agonized over writing these, and you can kind of see it in the writing. There's just a lot of common sense stuff, and I don't just mean in nonsensical storytelling. I'm talking just making these characters people that we care about, and just like basic writing stuff, like you said, of give us characters that we can relate to, that feel like real people, and let it, anchor us to them like we did with the original trilogy? Why do we start off with a couple of Jedis? How can we we need another character to look at those characters, unless we get like really deep into their philosophy and psychology, and it kind of paints them as these are the normal kinds of people in this universe, so it kind of makes us adjust our thinking, right? Like that's the other way that you do this, is you adjust our thinking to make them, air quotes, relatable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you necessarily need to have Anakin be the protagonist of this movie if you want to introduce him here and focus on Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon as the protagonist, because I think
Yeah.
we spend the most time with Qui-Gon out of any of the characters um, in this movie. I think if you were to time them, I think he would be the character that we gets the most screen time, but he doesn't
Who is
do
he?
anything, and he gets killed at the end after we don't really know all that much about him in the first place.
Yeah. And what does he care about? What does he believe in? Why, earlier I said that he follows the rules. I guess he doesn't. Okay, why? Just what's his ideology? I don't know.
Yeah,
What's his
exactly.
ideology versus any other Jedi? I don't know. How does he feel about things versus how Obi-Wan Kenobi feels about things? I don't
Yeah,
know.
and it would be interesting if you were to examine that sort of thing, because it could maybe play into the way Anakin feels about the Jedi philosophy, because Qui-Gon could have been extremely influential on him early on, and then when Obi-Wan becomes his master, they have a clash of ideas about how the Jedi should behave and what their role is in the galaxy and stuff like that.
Wouldn't it be really interesting if the Jedi just don't understand, like they have such a foothold on things, and they're so confident, almost to the point of arrogance, maybe past the point of arrogance, to where they don't understand how much more powerful this kid ultimately ends up being than they are, and they think that they control him. And part of the reason that he goes down the dark side is because they're kind of complacent, and they trust him too much, and they don't think he's going to go that way. What we end up getting is a kid that nobody ought to trust, and nobody should have trained him, and we should have known that very early.
Yeah, exactly. And the Jedi are a little bit they're a little bit morally ambiguous in the prequels, in that not that the Jedi were like completely, squeaky clean shiny good in the original trilogy. I think there's a lot of
Yeah, good point.
stuff that Obi-Wan says, like he's not afraid of lying. It's like to Luke, he says he told him like a half truth in the interest of preserving the greater good. He's not afraid of lying, and in Qui-Gon here we see him manipulating people with his powers and stuff, and he's not afraid to do it, but that's in the interest of the greater good. Um, the Jedi in the prequels, they kind of are very pacifist and don't want to get involved in anything, and their inaction causes things that maybe shouldn't happen to happen, that are bad, and they have to like
but
raise an
then
army,
it's never
but it's
but then
never
it's never really,
discussed.
yeah, it's never talked about. So like they're for all intents and purposes played as still the heroes, even though if you're paying attention, you probably ought to say, oh, okay, these people seem to be part of the problem. That's a really good point you're making. Maybe the idea with the Jedi originally was supposed to be that they know how to walk a line, that like they're you got the light side, the dark side. It's black and white in that sense, but compromise is inevitable. And like
Exactly.
even in Winter Soldier, even Captain America says that, right?
Yeah.
We compromised, we did things we weren't proud of, there was no other way around it, but there are lines that we wouldn't cross, and maybe that's the whole thing with the Jedi. So like when you look at the kind of morally ambiguous things that Qui-Gon does with, say, like manipulating the dice roll and whatever, like ultimately, how bad is that versus what he's going to get out of it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that would have been an interesting um, place to put Anakin as well, where the Jedi. I think the kind of the idea is he's frustrated with the way the Jedi system works and the Republic and how it's dysfunctional, and the Empire looks like a better option because the Sith kind of have a point. They're like, there's problems that need to be solved, and we're gonna go solve them. The Jedi just want to debate and sit around and let the problems get worse.
Yeah, good
But
point.
we don't. That's not really any sort of focus here or later
Yes,
on.
And it's too bad it's not because if he wants to tell a political story, if he wants to do any kind of allegory in this at all, how many times in history has like the worst, most oppressive person that could possibly come in power because he's willing to get stuff done?
That's all.
And
That's
whoever,
always how it happens.
yeah, and
Every single
whoever,
instance of a brutal dictator coming to power, that's how it happens.
yeah, it's because people, and isn't that ironic? It's like we want to see our leaders be proactive. We also want to see our protagonists be proactive, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We like people who get stuff done. We like people that have motivation. Whenever you have a story about a character who doesn't really have any motivation, usually the only way you can make that a great story is when their character arc is either about finding motivation or tragically they never do.
Yeah.
But if you're going to have characters that don't do anything, the story must be about how they're not doing anything and the consequences of that. If it's just portrayed as that's okay, that ain't the human condition, guys.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that could
I
have
don't know
been
what that has to do with anything here, but that's,
no, I think it speaks
get off
to
my soapbox.
I think it speaks to a lot of what we were speaking about earlier, where like in 3, Anakin just yells about, I believe the Jedi are evil. But like it should be more complicated than that. And I think there's seeds in the movies that could potentially make it more complicated, but it's just it never goes all the way to make it interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, on a superficial level, the whole pod racing thing, I think, is visually an inspired idea. I like it.
It is very
Uh,
cool.
I, I think it's cool. I have the video game for the Dreamcast, and it's
I was
really
gonna
fun.
say I had the N64 one, and
It's the same game.
I had a great time playing that as a kid. It's a really fun game.
My only complaint about that game is that there's a lot of these stretches, these long straight stretches that just like where nothing's going on. Like those
Yeah,
courses are so giant and boring.
yeah, kind of like parts of this movie.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, a little over bloated, and yeah. Um, Once again, this movie is immediately kind of positively enhanced by the score. I mean,
Oh yeah, John Williams
obviously
is a
that stuff's
master.
great. I have listened through this entire soundtrack several times. I bought it.
Duel of the Fates is one of my favorite Star Wars songs ever. The song that
It's
plays during
it's
the Darth Maul, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan fight.
it's
It's amazing.
amazing. Why can't that help to bring some emotional weight to something that's actually kind of waiting and weighty and endearing or something
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
or something
that fight is one of my
anything.
favorite things to watch on a superficial level out of all of the prequel movies. I think it's my favorite lightsaber duel of the prequels just because it's choreographed so well.
Yeah, but there's no reason that you couldn't just go to a ballet and see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Why does it have to be inside of a narrative context? Just make a stage show. Have like Lord of the Dance with lightsabers.
I'm kind of surprised they haven't done stage
Yeah,
shows with lightsaber duels. That'd actually be pretty cool. I'd go see
I'd be
that.
really I'd be really surprised if they haven't.
I'd go see that. Just like people that are really good at martial arts fighting with lightsabers, that'd be awesome.
Something that I could not believe when I found out about it is that this pod race scene is cut down quite a bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was longer than this, and I remember in the theater thinking this was pretty darn long. There's more to it. If memory serves, I mean, I haven't looked at special features in a long time, but a few years ago, I was watching some stuff on this and looking at deleted scenes and stuff. They actually had to truncate this.
There's a lot of deleted scenes from Tatooine. I didn't know that they cut a lot of stuff out from the pod racing um, race, but there is a deleted scene on Tatooine. It's a fist fight between Anakin and Kid Greedo, and
Yeah,
Greedo is infamously, the
he
Rhodian
shot first.
that gets shot by Han Solo in the cantina in New Hope.
I mean, he got shot first.
Yes.
That's what I meant to say.
um, which is another kind of typical prequel thing. Like, why do we need to see Anakin fight Greedo? I'm kind of glad they cut it out of the movie. you know?
Yeah, because again, it's that cute, clever, I think badly tongue in cheek. Oh hey, look, here's characters you've seen before. Like isn't it cool that like they they conveniently all ran into each other in all these different places.
Hmm.
Um, One of the deleted scenes too was the opening of this. I mean, like it was so long. The opening of the pod race, with the announcers, they go through every single person who's on a pod racer, and like they tell you who they all are, and it's like it doesn't matter. It's not important. Why was that in the script? Much less shot.
The only two people that matter are Anakin and Sebulba, and Sebulba barely matters.
Yeah, Sebulba only matters because we had an exchange with him earlier, and that he's a rival, and that's set up, and we all know. Here's the thing: we all know how this is going to end. Because if it
Yeah,
doesn't end
exactly.
that way, then Anakin doesn't get off this planet. Importantly, Luke Skywalker also had to go through a couple things on Tatooine before he was able to like get in a ship and leave it, right?
Hmm.
But we're not we weren't an hour into the movie before it happened.
Right.
Like
We're kind of.
I'm gonna go this far. I think you could have opened this movie with the pod racer scene,
Yeah, I think so too.
cut a lot of other things out of it, and like how hard would it have been to just set up? Yeah, there's these Jedi's that are here, and I don't know. I mean, like I don't want to rewrite the movie, but I'm just saying, like I kind of think this is all just about an exciting action scene that takes place on a planet with land vehicles, because we sort of had some of that in Star Wars, and then stuff you recognize. Oh, we saw Jabba the Hutt for a second, and oh we've got the sand creatures or whatever they're called with the guns and the you know
Oh, the Tusken Raiders.
thank you, yeah, the Tusken Raiders.
Yeah, it's the pacing of this movie gets kind of interesting at the end because we had action before, but I feel like all of the big action scenes of the movie are front loaded or back loaded at the end of the film. Like we get this pod racing action scene, and then we're going to be building up after this to the big fight scene on Naboo when they leave, and there's kind of all that stuff going on. We had all the dialogue scenes in the middle of the movie, and it's just bookended by the big action scenes, sort of. I mean, we
Do you
still got to
feel?
flog through some of the romantic dialogue, but
Oh yeah, can't wait for that. Do you feel like? And I should mention that, by the way, that I mean, there's a lot of great visual detail. I mean, like
yeah,
it's
I
just
think
that.
C-3PO's design right there looks really cool. Like the way that all the wires are there and the spinny thing behind his eyes. Like that looks great
Well,
design
and
wise.
I was thinking also of things like in the you've got the patrons in the stands, and you've got the aliens like walking up and down trying to like sell them treats and stuff. I mean, it's cool,
Yeah,
some of the details they put in. But as I think it's true with all three of these, the material isn't worthy of the talent that's on it.
right. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the designs from this movie are really cool. Like one of my favorite ship designs is we saw earlier Darth Maul's Sith infiltrator ship, and it's on screen for like a few seconds, and it looks awesome. It's kind of like an earlier version of the TIE fighter. It's got the wings of the TIE fighter. It looks kind of similar to the TIE fighter that Darth Vader eventually pilots.
I like the contrast with the Republic ships in this, that they look a lot more sleek and polished.
Mm. And they when you get to Attack of the Clones, the Republic, frigates and stuff look really similar to Star Destroyers, and you can see how they would evolve into looking like a more aggressive, um, evil looking design later on. But all of the, you know, beginnings of that design are there. It's cool.
That's a great point. Yeah. What is the point of Anakin Skywalker having all this engineering prowess?
I'm not sure. I mean, um, they wanted to kind of make him a good pilot, I suppose. So maybe he's supposed to fill the void that Han Solo filled in the original trilogy, where you need the pilot guy. I'm not really sure.
Well, was it mentioned in the original trilogy that Anakin Skywalker was a good space pilot? I thought it was.
Yeah, I
That's
think it is mentioned.
that's
That's
in there,
right.
so I think that's probably why they did that. But I mean, like, he's got to be an engineering genius and have the highest midichlorian count ever. I mean, like, he was just kind of like genetically predisposed to be the most important thing ever, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, he is Star Wars Jesus. He didn't have a father, and you know, his mom is kind of like the Virgin Mary. It's
yep.
kind of really on the nose.
And you can certainly, well, and again, that could be really interesting. Where, like, you have Star Wars Jesus, but what if Jesus went bad? I mean,
Yeah,
like, that could be a great story.
it could. Yeah, I just would have liked it to have been a little bit more subtle than that. I guess you know. I don't know.
But yeah, ultimately, at the end of the day, I think what these movies are doing are just kind of like trying to fill in gaps. It's just like, okay, we told you about stuff that happened before episode 4. You kind of want those, so like let's just fill in. But like, it's just not done with enough heart. And then at the same time, it's also, there's a lot of continuity problems anyway. So the movies just feel a little kind of pointless. I mean, I just feel like the original trilogy watches a lot better without these.
I think so too. The thing that I'll say about the prequels is the best thing about them is they produced a lot of good locales and stuff that they used in video games and novels later, and comic books and things like that.
Sure. Yeah,
Um,
Coruscant, especially.
yeah, Coruscant's really cool. I love the idea of a planet that's entirely a city.
Wish we'd done something with it.
Me too.
But yeah, I'm with you. So yeah, we are still in this pod racer scene. I mean, we know what's gonna happen, right?
Yeah. And if you watch the trailers for this movie, I've went back and watched some of the trailers for the Phantom Menace, and the pod racing stuff in the trailers, you know, it's pretty much all in the movie what they show, and it looks really exciting and stuff, but you expect it to kind of get on with itself after a while, right?
Yeah. Well, it's just there's
There's
nothing
no
really
stakes.
behind this. Yeah, I mean, it's trying to dupe us into thinking there are stakes. Oh, okay, if they lose, then Anakin Skywalker has to stay a slave. But that's not going to happen because it's a prequel,
And you don't care about him.
and yeah, exactly, exactly. So
Like I could,
there's nothing
like,
beneath
yeah,
this. Like they try to make it like really kind of heartfelt with him and his mother right before this and stuff, but it all feels obligatory. It doesn't. It
yeah. I mean,
plug it in for X and Y. It's just, we're supposed to have that, so there it is.
right,
Not that it's actually informing anything.
right. Like you compare,
Emotionally.
you compare this to a similar sort of situation like with X-Men First Class. You know that Xavier and Magneto are going to have a falling out by the end of that movie. So, like, one could make the argument, what's the point of watching this movie? Because you know that they're going to end up having a fallout at the end of the movie. Well, the reason I like that movie and I cared about, you know, what happened in it so much was they made me care about the relationship those two people had with each other, and it was like we talked about before with Darth Vader. It was so tragic seeing that relationship break up. Like, if I cared about Anakin and was really invested in his character, and he was in danger here and was like almost dying and stuff, I know that he would get out of it, I guess, but it would be more exciting because you'd be worried about him, even though you
Uh,
knew what was going to happen.
what I have always said is the check for a good prequel is if you had never, and it's hard to tell sometimes, but if you had never seen the movies that it informs, and you watch it and the story stand on its own and you care about everybody involved and you're thrilled by it, it's a good prequel.
Hmm.
And that's, and there are very few of them, right? Like if you came into this and this was the first thing Star Wars you ever saw, would you care to see any more? I mean,
No.
like this is informed, and I've said this a lot with prequels. these are informed far too much by what happens after. You can do a little bit of that. You can have some cool cameos and stuff that are organic and make sense to be there. You can have some kind of fun, like Easter eggs and things. But the check should be, if I've never seen Star Wars, I should be able to watch this and care what happens, and that it's not just to see how these people get to where I know they're going to go. That's the mark of a good prequel. That's why I always hold Monsters University up really high as a great prequel.
Oh yeah, Monsters University is great, and like that movie and X-Men First Class have little
First Class
continuity
does it
errors.
too. Yeah, but
But
I
they're
don't
so
care
good
about
that
the
you don't
continuity
care.
errors. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. I mean, it sort of sucks for watching the other movies later, and we could have been more careful about it. But that doesn't kill the movie if the movie stands on its. It's almost the same thing as movies should work without having to have read the book, without knowing the source material.
Yes.
Uh, it's the same kind of thing, and these don't do that.
Yeah, at the very least, even if you're a fan of those movies, you can't say that they aren't heavily informed by what comes later, and you can't take them out of the context of the larger saga. And I don't know, like maybe it's impossible at this point to kind of say to anyone that's seen these that watch these without seeing the original trilogy, because Star Wars is so big.
Sure, yeah. Well, I just think it's writing on it too much. I mean, I think it is
No, it
okay if it's
definitely is.
I think it
And
is okay if it's heavily informed by what came later, as long as yeah, because in some ways, that's you kind of have to do that. You're in a pre-existing world, but the important thing is that you don't have to have seen that stuff.
yeah, and that's
You
kind
know,
of what I
it
meant. Yeah.
it establish yeah exactly. I'm just just for the sake of clarification, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, and I mean you can run into the trap of spending too much time establishing things that people know already. That's the difficulty with writing a prequel.
Yeah.
Is how much of that do you recap or bring back, mention again, that kind of, that can be really kind of problematic. Prequel's hard, I mean, like,
Yeah, it's
I
definitely a tough
still
balancing act.
I'm still always very much on the fence of whether or not we even need them a lot of the time. Even when I really get a great one, a lot of the time I find myself thinking, but we could have made a great sequel too. I mean, like,
That's true.
you take
Yeah.
everything on its own terms. Yes, I love First Class. I am so glad we got it. To get Days of Future Past, because then we got a nice soft reboot for X-Men, and ultimately First Class feels like a necessary prequel in order to move forward. I needed that to inform that movie.
Yes.
But without Days of Future Past, if we had quit there and we just had First Class, is that a movie that we have to have? Do we really? I mean, it's nice to flesh out those
Right.
backstories, but did we have to have it? No, not really. We could
No.
have we could have made a
Yeah.
really great X-Men 4. So you see what I'm saying? Just use that example again.
Yeah, and the same thing with these movies. Like, there's interviews with Mark Hamill doing press for Return of the Jedi where he talks about, George Lucas's plans for Episode 7. Like, they were maybe going to do them back after Return of the Jedi had come out. And instead of doing these, why couldn't we have just moved forward with that story all the way back after Return of the Jedi was released if we were going to do more Star Wars movies potentially? I think we're at this point with Disney getting it and doing Episode 7. I feel like we're getting the movie that I've wanted to see all along in the first place, where it should have went instead of this place.
Dan, how much of it is a matter of merchandising dollars? How much? Because we haven't talked about that at all yet, and
That's
about
true.
how much of these movies do kind of seem to. I still think do kind of seem to be obviously less about telling a story and more about strategizing what we can sell to people and what we can entice people to come to the theater to see. If we go forward, we can't sell Darth Vader anymore.
Yeah, that's
Now,
true.
it's funny I'm saying that because they're making Episode 7 and they're going to find ways to get that iconography in there, and they're still going to sell Darth Vader. We already know that there's a voice changer mask with the Episode 7 logo on it, so they are going to be doing that. But I'm just wondering if, from Lucas's perspective, he's thinking we got to go back and do Anakin Skywalker because Darth Vader is the thing that sells Star Wars dollars.
That's true. I
I don't
think
know.
that definitely had to have been in somewhat of the thinking. I mean, if you make a Star Wars movie at this point in 1999, when Star Wars figures for, people that just stand around in the background and weren't named sell a lot. You kind of have
Yep.
to think about, what kind of merchandising thing you're going to do. And this movie, I remember, this movie was sold heavily on Darth Maul, and I think that's a lot of the reason why I liked him so much.
Yeah.
But they definitely did have, Anakin and Darth Vader stuff. From what I remember, I mean, even just that poster that you were mentioning, they were kind of saying, "Hey guys, look, you're gonna come to the movie to see what happened to Darth Vader when he was a kid." That's kind of
Yeah.
why they wanted people to go.
Well, I'm just thinking if the long term kind of wisdom was we know that when we get to 3 and we have him turned into Darth Vader, we can have Darth Vader on screen for 35 seconds and make $1 billion on Darth Vader toys and merchandise and stuff. And
And
I mean
and
that's what they did.
yeah, I mean, I was gonna mention, you must remember as well as I do, all of the merchandising stuff. Darth Vader, when Revenge of the Sith came out, Vader was everywhere.
Everywhere, and he's we see Anakin Skywalker as Darth Vader for 35 seconds.
And he goes, "No."
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. I was there. I was there. We're gonna have to experience it again. Why is it that every time we talk about Darth Vader, you make me relive that moment, Dan? Stop doing it. But no, I think it is very interesting to ask the question: why did we go backwards and not go forwards?
It is an interesting question.
So I don't know
Because
that I have the answer. That's a speculative idea. Perhaps that had something to do with it. But I always got the sense that for some reason Lucas really didn't want to go forward. And stories are primarily, if you're gonna do serialized stuff, it's more interesting to keep going forward. you know
yeah, see, I never know what Lucas's thing with Star Wars was, because when the prequels came out, he said that he had this planned as a six-movie saga the whole time, and then you see people like Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford after Return of the Jedi talk about how they're gonna, like, there's plans to do more, and Lucas has written things that he wants to eventually do. So, like, it's obvious to me, if you can take, I guess, those testimonies at face value, that Lucas was like lying or didn't know what he wanted to do with that. But like, I don't think there was ever a definitive plan, like Lucas made it seem like when he came out with these movies. I mean, he may have
there,
had some plan. I don't know, but I don't.
there are,
It just, to me, from my perspective, I don't think there was ever a definitive plan.
no, well, there are conflicting quotations from various time
Exactly.
periods, and I don't think he just like conveniently forgot what he was doing, or I think he changed his mind in places, and I think that he had maybe a profound change in the way he thought about storytelling at some point. Although, I mean, I always thought that, but then we see his original script for the original trilogy, and it lines up really interestingly with these. So I don't know how much of that's even true. I'm just saying, it's the same
It's
thing I had with
really,
it's the same thing I had with McFarlane. Just have somebody come in and help you, man. You've got good ideas on paper. These are both idea guys, but you don't know very much about the art of storytelling.
yeah,
You
and
know, get some other blood
that's
in there.
that's the huge caveat I always give when I talk about Lucas is I think he's one of the best concept guys in the business. I mean, look at the two franchises that he's primarily responsible for creating. Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And it's weird, like, you look at a movie like American Graffiti. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that's a really interesting movie because he wrote and directed that movie, and it's really solid. It's really good. It's just not a big action fest kind of movie like Indiana Jones and Star Wars are. It's a little bit more, smaller, character focused kind of piece.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's the difference between uh telling a story that you gotta tell, I've got this story that's like in my head and I have to get it on paper, and I really need people to see it, and like it's about me and it's about how I feel about things versus trying to strategize a franchise to sell to people. It's the difference between I want to see this and I gotta try to guess what everybody else wants to see. There's always a certain amount of keeping your audience in mind you have to do, but to tell a good story, you must start from a place of what would I like to see, not what would everybody else like to see, and you got to draw from personal experiences no matter what you're writing.
That's very true because that's I think one of the reasons why American Graffiti is so good. I've seen interviews with Lucas about that movie, and he talks a lot about how, and it's evident in the movie that it's a lot about the culture of the 1950s when he was growing up and was a teenager, and what it was like growing up at that time, and how it had changed since the 60s and 70s when that movie came out. And it's very obvious that his passion is there. He really cares
Yeah.
about what he's talking about, and that just doesn't come off here. I
It
think
makes me
it's
wonder
exactly what you're
if
saying.
it makes me wonder if he thinks that if he's like trying to play in the genre, if he's trying to like figure the genre out as opposed to uh, doing his own, like doing his own thing with it. You know what I mean? Like it's almost
Hmm.
like he's like chaining himself to whatever he thinks a sci-fi or science fantasy movie or serial or whatever. And of course, these don't go back to serials like the like Star Wars did. It's almost too like obsessed with its own lore in a certain way. I think.
Yeah.
I think that you have to approach this stuff the same way. There's certain tropes and things that you kind of just inherently would have to have if you want this to be a particular genre, sure, but it doesn't and even if you're not writing, say, quote, literary fiction, you still are always going to make things feel more real, and your characters will come alive more, feel more authentic if you're drawing from personal experience and at the very least basing characters on yourself or people you know, giving them jobs you've done, something similar to that. This is basic storytelling stuff. And it's a thing that clearly he knows, he knew, or he knows, or once knew how to do, as long as he wasn't doing genre stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like you think about the jobs, that was interesting you mentioned the jobs thing about
But then,
I
but then you got THX, so I don't know.
yeah, I think it's interesting to think about like the jobs of the characters in the original trilogy are a little bit more like analogous to some of the jobs that people would have in our world. Like Luke's a farmer, Han Solo's a drug smuggler,
Great
and
point. Yeah.
Leia's a politician.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of these people just don't have all that much in common with regular people, where it's like those it's what jobs people do in our world just in that context, I suppose.
Oh, I should mention that we just saw General Zod. We just saw Terrence Stamp.
Yes, we
What
did. I
is
noticed
what
that.
is Terrence Stamp doing in this movie? There's all these like there's some great major actors in this that get hired to stand there. And it's really sad, like if I had been if I'd known more about actors in the business and stuff when this came out, because I wasn't as into all this stuff as I am now.
Yeah, yeah.
I wasn't as into the behind the scenes stuff. I didn't notice Terrence Stamp the first time I saw this. If I had known all of that and was like looking at production stuff like we do now with the interwebs, I'd be like, oh my god, Terrence Stamp in a Star Wars movie. Oh my god, Sam Jackson in a Star Wars movie, right? Like,
Hmm.
and there's all these like really cool major actors, and they don't get to do anything.
It, yeah, like the cat. If anything, like I said before, the casting's great. I think it's so cool that we got the guy that played the Emperor in the original trilogy to come back, and he can play it
Yeah,
because he doesn't have to have all that makeup on, and he looks like the age he would be in the first place in this time period. That's really
yeah,
cool.
it's cool. It's just like Grandpa Munster getting old enough to look like Grandpa Munster, because
Yeah,
that
that's
because
true.
that happened.
Yeah.
When he first played that role, he was like, I want to say, if memory serves, and I could be off on this, I want to say he was like 35, 40, and they just caked him up in
Really?
makeup to look like Grandpa Munster. And then they did the reunion movies way later, and then they didn't have to do as much makeup because he was an old man at that point.
That's really
I
funny.
also think that the actor who played Grandpa Munster was so known for that role and so loved that role that he insisted in being buried in his Grandpa Munster garb.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's dedication. That's awesome.
But now this is a thing I heard years and years ago, and I'm not looking it up right now, so I could be wrong. But I thought I read that somewhere
That's
at one
really
point.
cool.
Yeah, my source is my brain.
Oh,
Anyway,
and here's the Jedi Council,
you should get
and
one of these chairs. We should get these chairs, Dan.
I would actually really like to have one of those chairs. They are really cool looking. They're like futuristic beanbag chairs.
Hard to see the dark side is.
Now, this Yoda puppet doesn't look nearly as good as the original trilogy one does.
No, but I'll still take it over CG Yoda.
Yes, and when they released the Phantom Menace in theaters in 3D, they replaced the puppet with CG Yoda. Interestingly
Oh,
enough.
oh, of course they did. Because you can't have Star Wars getting re-released without screwing with it some more. Like, can you believe that? It's like, okay, so we go back to old movies that we feel like the effects aren't good enough anymore because they're like not updated, so we have to go back and change them. But then we're gonna take a thing with CG from 1999 and do exactly the same thing to it. Pfft,
I know, right? See,
okay.
Samuel Jackson is one of my favorite actors working. He's one of the most charismatic actors I've ever seen. I just, whenever he's on screen, I always enjoy him no matter what he's in. And this movie managed to make Samuel Jackson uncharismatic.
Well, again, because he's just this really cool actor that they got because everybody knows him and they know that they can sell toys based on him. By the way, that's another thing that Red Letter Media brought up. That's not my point, but I agree with him on it. That oh, it's Sam Jackson because he'll sell action figures and he's cool and that kind of thing. And then he's just there because he's a name. And
Yeah.
you can see all this attitude in his face where he's like, I would love to do a thing right now. Wouldn't that be great? And he just kind of sits there.
The way he plays the character, he has this like underlying darkness when he's like fighting and stuff too, and he kind of acts like he's really angry. And I'm like, wow, this is some like darkness to this Jedi Master character, the way he plays it. But it's never really explored at all. Not that we should be focusing on Mace Windu because he's of course a side character, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think there's Samuel Jackson did a lot more with the character than was written on paper, and he's
Do,
still not
do you
not
think?
enjoyable to watch.
Do you think he did more with it than what was on the? I think maybe he did by episode 3.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I
Oh,
mean. During that
oh, I
fight with
see.
like
I'm sorry.
Palpatine and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So this is one of the scenes where a lot of people complain. Just being in a Galactic Senate doing debate it's not as long as people make it out to be. I don't think it's as gratuitous. Um, but I have to admit, this kind of stuff did bore me as a kid, and it still bores me to this day. I don't know. I just don't think the politics are interesting enough to warrant spending this much time on it. Um, we're still kind of talking about blockades and trade disputes and stuff. The movie opened with that, and they were saying it's the beginning, and maybe there's something larger going on here. But and there is, but they're still talking about it in this context with the, you know, debating about taxes and blockades and things. Um,
It's so exciting, Dan.
and I love how like the first glimpse we get of the Republic is that it's already like completely dysfunctional and nobody can get anything done. I just think that's sort of funny.
Yeah, actually, that is kind of funny, isn't it? Well, I think maybe that's actually somewhat of a good idea, right? That maybe the idea is that there's already some problems that nobody's admitting to, and there's some denial, and nobody realizes it, and so it's easier
Yes.
in when that kind of thing is going on for somebody like him to just come in, and what he's doing from us outsiders is really super obvious and really should be to them too. Now that might be giving the script too much credit, but if that's the idea, that's a thing that happens.
Yeah, and that's how Julius Caesar came to power. The Roman
Yep.
Republic was completely dysfunctional. It was controlled by an elite class behind the scenes, just bribing all the politicians. And he was like, "We need to put an end to this, and I'm going to be the guy to do it." And he took absolute power by starting a civil war. So I
Oh,
think
I'm
that's
sorry, Terrence Stamp, but you're getting voted out, pal. They're not. They are no longer kneeling before Zod. That's all I'm saying.
it is kind of cool that the Emperor dethrones General Zod in this movie to some superficial degree.
That's Natalie Portman acting. I can see why people thought she was a terrible actress. When they saw this, and to be fair, this was like one of the first things she did, right? Like,
Yeah,
was
she
she
was
not
really young.
just out of? I want to say she was just out of acting school when she got this gig, and or like had not done very much at all. You know what? I am gonna say I'm not real impressed with the backdrop with the background here. Are you? This is not
Yeah, it
looking
doesn't look
so
very
hot.
good.
It's just under detailed. Looks almost like muddied. They're almost like a PS2 graphic or PS1 graphic. Uh, but, but 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 anyway, you know, when I was a kid, I was a little confused by this scene because, and I just think this is funny. That I was, you know, I'm dumb.
Yeah.
When I first saw this movie, I was like, well, yes, of course that's a ship. I didn't realize that he was using telepathy or whatever. Like,
It's like Anakin can identify things.
yeah,
He's frustrated.
that's a ship. I think it's just the way it's shot. I didn't realize that there wasn't a screen someplace else or something because everything was shot so close.
Right.
But anyway, okay, so here is the famous Yoda line that, once again, I agree with Red Letter Media when he says that you can take each of these and interchange them. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Well, but can't also hate lead to suffering, suffering leads. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
what does that mean? You know, recently Dan and I reviewed an episode of Star Wars Rebels where Yoda said something where we were like, I feel like you just used two words that mean the same thing. And there's a lot of that happened in this where like it's supposed to sound like really wise, but they're just kind of platitudes that when you really start thinking about them, you're like, I don't think that means anything. And it's frustrating too because you need those scenes to tell you what the Jedi are all about, right?
You do, and it's especially frustrating because they got that kind of the platitudes so right in Empire. Like when we did that commentary, we discussed a lot about what the things that Yoda was saying to Luke meant, and there was different potential interpretations of what he was saying, and they were really a philosophy about how to live your life, you know? It was interesting to discuss those sort of moral quandaries with the stuff he was saying. And then you have him trying to look wise and saying things that don't mean anything here, and it's frustrating because Yoda is such an interesting character because of the platitudes. You don't really know all that much about him other than the way he kind of purports to live the way he does.
You know, I'm sorry, Palpatine, but you're no Frank Underwood, pal. That's
Hey, Kevin Spacey would actually make a good emperor if they were to cast him.
he
He
would, but
kind
Kevin.
he kind of looks like Ian McDiarmid.
Well, I think Kevin Spacey makes a good, you know, anybody who's like conniving and trying to come up with a ladder without anybody noticing, and you
That's
know,
true.
moving the chess pieces around, you know, kind of plotter and schemer. That's he excels at that. Obviously, I think he just won a Golden Globe for it.
He did. Yeah, which is awesome.
Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, I love that show. It would be really cool if they cast him as
Not
a
to
Sith
date
Lord
my,
in
not to date our commentary, but you know, oh yeah, they should do that. Him or Kelsey Grammer.
that would be awesome too.
That would work, right?
Yeah,
He's good at
that
evil.
would be. Yeah, he is. I have a feeling that Andy Serkis is going to end up being like the big bad Sith Lord guy, because
Oh
he's the
yeah.
guy that has that monologue in the little teaser we got. But obviously, there's like no information with that, so I have no way
Oh,
of knowing.
was that Andy Serkis? You know, more and more I'm starting to really like him. I love his work in the Planet of the Apes movies.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's great in the Lord of the Rings trilogy too as Gollum. That was the first thing I ever seen him in. But I
Yep.
love the Planet of the Apes movies.
He's kind of the master. I didn't know if you'd watch those. We need to do commentaries on those, dude.
Yes, we
That
do. The
that would
original
be
Planet of the Apes too.
yeah. Start there, but then just skip to the new ones because I really want to talk about those.
Yeah, we should.
Anyway, so Phantom Menace. Hey, you know, Phantom Menace was always a weird, ambiguous title. I don't know what it means, Dan. Who is the Phantom Menace?
I think it's supposed to be like the Emperor and the Sith in general, like doing things
Okay,
in the background.
they're so
Um,
menacing.
yeah, I mean, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad sounding title, especially when you compare it to like Attack of the Clones.
And yeah, and like Revenge of the Sith is a title I've always thought was kind of cool because Return of the Jedi was
Yeah.
originally called Revenge of the Jedi, and they reused that. I thought that was cool, and it doesn't make sense for Return of the Jedi to be called Revenge of the Jedi in the first place anyway. So I thought it was cool that they used that. But yeah, Attack of the Clones is by far the worst title ever.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm just excited to see the new one because I want to find out who woke the Force up. I want to know who woke it up. I want to know why did the I think the Force must have forgotten to set an alarm clock and somebody's waking it up. So
Someone just played "Can't You Hear Me Knocking" by the Rolling Stones. Oh no, man, no.
is that what happened? And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
people go to their primary physician, and their primary physician is like, "Wow, your midichlorian count is off the. I guess the Force
Oh
awakened."
God.
So we're about to get the midichlorian scene. Would you like to complain about that, Dan?
Not to beat a dead horse, but because everyone and their mom has
Everybody, yeah.
complained about this, but
Even my
it's
mom.
I don't know
No, my mom didn't complain about
it.
it.
No,
sorry,
my
sorry.
mom, no, my mom didn't either because she didn't watch these movies with me. But
Okay, okay. Mine
but
did, but I think she liked them more than I did.
but the the Metachlorian thing, obviously, it just kind of removes the mysticism of the Force that we always thought we had in the original trilogy, where it was kind of this ambiguous entity that wasn't that the Jedi and the Sith didn't understand other than how they tap into it. Like there was a lot of ambiguity as to how it worked and how it manifested itself through people. Kind of like the idea of God working in mysterious ways, that kind of platitude that people say about modern day religions. Um, I don't know, trying to make it a science fiction concepty kind of thing is a little antithetical, I think. But
It strikes me as defensive writing. You
yeah,
know, and as I said earlier, it just strikes me as we don't, or I guess just Lucas is writing by himself. You know, I don't like trust this material on its own anymore. It's not okay that it's just science fantasy. We've got to somehow make it more it's more valid if it's now a science fiction thing. I'm like, nah, own what you are, man. I don't want Star Trek to be Star Wars. I don't want Star Wars to be Star Trek any more than I want Star Trek to be Star Wars. Yeah.
right,
And
exactly.
it just seems like a decade before Star Trek tried to make itself look more like Star Wars, we had Star Wars trying sort of to make itself look more like Star Trek. One of them was better at it, I think, but and then now we've got the same guy who made that happen, making Star Wars, and the world turned upside down, and dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. But anyway, I am really impressed that Liam Neeson was able to deliver that dialogue with a straight face. He says midi-chlorians. He says life could not exist without the midi-chlorians, and we would have no knowledge of the Force. Well, of course you'd have no knowledge. There'd be no life. You'd be dead. Or you'd be nothing. That line is really silly.
And it makes one wonder, like, do all people have midi-chlorians and they just don't have enough of them to tap into the Force? Or is it that, like, people that don't tap into the Force don't have midi-chlorians? Because if they don't have midi-chlorians, would they be dead? Like, I'm just not sure
Well,
about it. Maybe there's some
I'm
sort of
not
Star
either.
Wars lore thing in a book that I haven't read that explains all that, but
If you
I'm just
connect
not
it
all that educated about it.
if you connect it with the vague explanation of what the Force is in the original trilogy, which is it binds the universe together, you could make the argument that not everything would have to have midi chlorians as long as there were enough of them just in the universe in general, and then they hold everything somehow together. And then if you have a lot of midi chlorians in you, and that's where the midi chlorians in the universe decided to reside, then you're able to control more of the Force. But it's not really that interesting, is it? If we just make it a
Right.
biological thing, the sense I got, I guess I don't completely understand how this works, Dan. Can anybody become a Jedi? Do you have to be genetically predisposed in a certain way to be a Jedi?
You have to be force sensitive, and it's not like
Whatever
a
that
lineage
means.
it's not a lineage kind of thing. It's very vague in most things that I've read, where like it kind of happens by chance. Like certain individuals are born as force sensitive, and then they like there are some people that are born as force sensitives, and they're never trained to like use the force as a Jedi, but they can like sort of tap into it, and like they use it to their advantage, but like they don't really know what it is or how to control it or anything like that. Like they can't lift objects. It's kind of like Luke when he goes to Dagobah, where he has trouble like lifting rocks and things. Like maybe you can hear someone's thoughts or you can read them a little bit better. Um, So it's not really all that well defined as to like how someone gets, to be force sensitive. It's not an exact science, and I don't think it should be. I
No,
like
I'm
it
with
being
you.
sort of vague.
But did they not kind of imply, especially in Return of the Jedi, that Anakin Skywalker passed it on to his children?
Yes, and
Oh, okay.
it can run in family lines, but there are people that are born as force sensitive with parents that aren't. You know what I mean?
Okay, but does it ever work the other way? Can you have parents that are force sensitive and then you're not?
I'm
Does that
not
ever
sure.
happen? Yeah, I'm just
I'm
saying
not
that
sure.
that'd be kind of interesting. Yeah.
It would be interesting. That double that they got for Natalie Portman looks really similar to her with the makeup on. I think they did a good job of casting that decoy.
Yeah, that whole decoy thing always he's like I'm reaching for positives. That whole decoy thing always kind of bugged me. It's like who would sign up for that job? Also, that didn't
Yeah,
surprise
this is
anybody,
Natalie
right?
Portman at her finest.
Like
Yeah.
was there anybody in the
Everyone just
theater
kind of
who's
has
like,
deadpan looks on their
"What?
faces like
Is there some reason that we didn't know about this early?" It's a big reveal or something, and I just like I don't know. What was she supposed were we supposed to think that she was kind of just like a lowly maiden so that she would kind of have more in common with Anakin Skywalker, but then it just that like they both have kind of a lowly stature and kind of came from nothing, but then once we find out that she is like the queen, then is it just well he needed to think that for a while so that they would have something in common. There's a lot of stuff that I think is just kind of arbitrary, right? Where it's like, here's a, and then the big plot twist will be, she's not a decoy. I mean, she's the queen. I don't know.
Boss Nass
Dan,
is like schizophrenic. It's great where he just randomly like See, you know
I,
what we need for our next for the Star Wars spin-offs? We need the
oh
Boss
god,
Nass movie.
the Boss Nass movie. That would be great.
I want to see the
Uh,
origin of why he has that schizophrenic tweak where he just goes oh like a Murloc from World of Warcraft.
yeah, yeah. Are you suggesting that they do like a prequel for him, a la like Better Call Saul, where
Yeah,
it's like Boss Ass is like, "You will atone."
it'll be like House of Cards, but Boss Nass will be his rise through the Gungan political system, whatever that is.
Oh my god, that sounds amazingly bad.
That speeder looks
Oh my
good. I like the
god.
design.
Boss Ass is less annoying than Jar Jar.
He is. They're both equally as dense, but he's
He's
less
kind of
annoying.
fun. He's. I'm just saying. Hey, I want to be a Bombad general. I don't know what bomb. I don't know why it's a Bombad general. Are there like different like is there like Bombad general, rear general? Like there's like different generals.
I don't know.
But
But Boss Nass has to be the worst leader of all time if he makes Jar Jar a general of anything.
yeah, no, that's really dumb. No, what you do is if you want to reward somebody who is that stupid and that bad at everything, who a guy once told him you're not smart just because you can talk, then then what you should do is give him an honorary title that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, just give him a ceremonial position. And the scarier thing is, he becomes
Bombad
Naboo's.
general could be ceremonial.
That is true, but he manages to,
I know,
screw
but
up
then
and
it's
win the
not.
battle for them anyway. But we'll get
Uh,
there. The
yeah,
scarier thing is that
that's always great.
he becomes Naboo's senator later on in this trilogy.
I know. It's ridiculous, and I guess we're supposed to think that for some he's clumsy, but he actually has like some kind of skill or something that he doesn't tap into early on, or I don't even want to talk about what it could have been. None of that's there.
Maybe he's
So
like one of those really dumb, corrupt senators that just do whatever his donors tell him to do. That could be it.
yeah, that's probably what it is. And so, what qualified you to be a senator? Well, I dropped the giant energy ball out of the back, or a whole bunch of giant energy balls out of the back of this thing once, and killed a bunch of robots.
See,
I did that.
that's another spin-off show we could do. Jar Jar as his time as a senator, taking bribes and doing political machinations and screwing himself over.
So this just strikes me as entirely impractical. Why would you have? Why would you have a a hologram of a guy standing on a spindly thing, walking backwards while you're walking in front of it, just so you can talk to it? Why don't you just have a room for that? Is there some
And they
is there some
do.
reason that we have to be? Yeah, they do because they have it on a table. Is there some reason that we have to be heading toward a place and then they just stop and they talk in the hallway? Like and also, isn't it Cloak and Dagger where nobody's supposed to know that they're talking to him? Why
Yeah.
are they doing it in a hallway? They've got a room for that. Anyway, yeah, I'm complaining about that.
I
It's
remember
just really
seeing
impractical.
in the
Sorry.
first Phantom Menace trailer, there was a shot of these Gungan horses walking through a bog. That was like the first shot that you got of this movie. And I
Oh boy.
remember being like, "Oh, that looks really cool." And then you see them, and you're like, "Well, it's not as cool as I thought it was." Because it looked really mysterious, but
Yeah,
alas.
I don't know, man. The only phrase that goes through my head as I'm watching the end of this movie is let's get on with it. This is not the war that anybody came to see. Like, who
Thi-
cares about these people fighting a bunch of
let's
robots?
yeah, let's think about the Gungan strategy here. Their war
Oh,
strategy,
let's, Dan.
they have a giant bubble shield that they don't have any intent of ever leaving. So what are they hoping to accomplish in this battle?
Yeah, well, I guess the idea is supposed to be that they're
They're just
entirely
trying to hold the
defensive, but
position?
I guess all you had to do was say that they're pacifists and you could get away with that. But they're not. No,
I
I'm
know, I
just
just
saying,
think
like,
it's
you just be like,
funny.
oh, we're just defensive. We have defensive weapons, but we don't have offensive weapons. But, like, they make a big deal
Right.
earlier out of, like Boss Nass says, the Naboo hates us because we've got a giant army. Okay, then freaking use it, dude. Pick
Yeah,
up some
and you know what
guns and shoot the robot. You know what else? The whole pacifist thing breaks down when. And I'm not saying that I mean that's not in there, but I'm just saying like, yeah, you're right. The strategy makes no sense. Like, go past the shit and kill the robots. Like you don't even have to worry about real casualties on the other side.
you know
Just
what the
kill the robots.
you know what the best thing about their army is too? They're a water species and their entire army is designed to be on land.
Yeah, what's that about? You know what you could do? Well, now, and that's just a contrivance so that we can have them actually help the Naboo because, they were gonna stay underwater, but now they've made kind of like a uneasy alliance with the Naboo, who they usually don't get along with. I guess I think is what's supposed to happen. I haven't seen this in a while. I'm pretty sure that's what's
Yeah,
going
that's
on.
what it is.
I've been kind of watching it, and I think that's what happens in this
That's what
movie.
it is. Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. It's like you're like we got it now. Maybe they built the land army so that they could fight the Naboo if they ever wanted to. We don't
Right.
know anything about them. Maybe they want to be conquerors at some point. I don't know. It could be.
Boss
It could
Nass
be
trying to
anything.
conquer things would be the best idea of all time.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. And then they're all like, "Oh, we got to say Bravo leader a bunch of times because that's like a Star Wars thing."
Yeah. These Naboo fighters look similar to some of the rebel ships to some degree. I think that was on purpose.
I cannot watch this movie without wanting donuts.
Oh yeah?
Because they have the giant like crescent ship thing. And it's
Oh,
really
that's
cool
right.
looking. That like shoots all that like sends all the fighters out of it. But boy, every time I see that, I just want to go eat donuts, Dan.
This movie, whenever I watch it, always reminds me of Pizza Hut because when the movie came out, Pizza Hut had the licensing
Yeah,
for all the
they
toys, and
made the
I
toys. Hmm?
they did, and I had like the Darth Maul cycle toy from there. I had like a bunch of them, and I
Those
would
were
go there
cool.
and get the Pizza Hut kids meals and get cool Star Wars toys when I went
Do
there.
you remember they had the planets that like spun around? They had like
Yes, I remember those too.
They had there was like a Coruscant toy.
Yeah,
Hey, did you ever play the collectible card game Young Jedi?
I did not. No.
Okay, that was based on this movie, and it's the reason I know who Aura Singh is because
That's awesome.
I built a deck entirely around Aura Singh, and it's a really easy CCG. It's not a it's not a real complicated one, but it's a good like obviously it's been dead for years, but it's a good like starter game for like kids that have never played CCGs before. If you want to learn like the basic mechanics of those kinds of games before you play something a lot more complicated like Magic or Versus, which is also dead now, which is super sad because that was my favorite thing ever. But anyway, that was a game I liked a lot, and that's one of the reasons that I love the tone and the atmosphere of this movie so much. Because the more I played those cards, the more I just kind of got into into the mood of this movie. And boy, I just wish that there was some like character stuff behind it because I really like the mood, but I don't give a crap about anybody involved. It's all
Yeah,
style
exactly.
and no substance. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here's the
This
only
is
reason
one
to
of my
watch this
favorite
movie.
moments of the movie.
I'm mostly kidding, but it's okay. It's the big one.
No, you're. I'm completely serious in agreeing with you on that point. This is my favorite part of this movie, and it's the best part of it.
Oh man,
The
and Ray Park's
music
really
and the
cool. The
yeah,
choreography, yeah.
the choreography and the music make this.
I mean, it's just really sad that like this movie that story wise really doesn't work at all. It's got this amazing score behind it. Uh,
Yeah.
all you want to do is take this music and put it behind a scene that makes you cry,
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely. I
You
wish
know,
they'd use it again in the new movies for something that had emotional weight behind it.
I don't, only because it would be really kind of lopsided to have like three movies in the middle that don't use it anyplace, and then all of a sudden it's back. I don't
That
really
would be
want
funny.
that. Let's try not to derive too much from these, even the good stuff, just because, well, there's been history in between, right? I mean, like, this is. Now, I mean, I want to say this is Darth Maul's theme, but then they keep using it, I think, a little bit later, and he's dead, so.
No,
Or
this
did they
never
not
gets
bring it
used
back?
again.
Oh, does
Not
it
yet.
not? Okay,
No,
all
it's
right, I
not.
didn't remember. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I didn't remember.
No, it's the theme for this fight specifically, and I'm with you. Like since they got John Williams back to score the new movies, I'm sure that he'll make themes that are just as memorable for the specific scenes that we see in those movies. See, Ray
I mean,
Park.
seriously, just make this a stage show, dude.
Ray Park, who also played Toad in the first X-Men
Toad.
movie, is Darth Maul,
Yeah.
and he is a really talented martial artist. Funny story, I went to the Star Wars weekends at Disney World last time I was in Florida, and we got to see a Darth Maul stage show with Ray Park. Some random guy
Oh,
on the street gave us
cool.
a tickets to it. It was like a limited like seating thing, and only like people that had paid like a ton of money to go see it got to see it. And this guy was like, "Hey, I have to leave because my kid's sick. Do you guys want these tickets?" He gave them to me and my cousin. We were like, "Heck yeah!" And we went in and got to see
Whoa.
Ray Park do like all these cool moves with his lightsaber and stuff. And there was a guy in a Darth Maul costume that dueled him. It was awesome.
That's amazing. Oh, so he didn't put the makeup on?
No, he didn't have the makeup on, but they fought each other with double-bladed lightsabers and were doing like backflips and stuff. It was awesome.
Oh, that's so cool, Dan.
Yeah,
I envy you, dude. That sounds really fun.
it was really cool.
I'm gonna be doing that like all week now.
And
Ah,
Ray Park at the
love
time
that.
was promoting the G.I. Joe movie because he plays
Oh, he's in
Snake Eyes
that.
in that. Yeah, he plays Snake Eyes in those movies.
Oh, that's cool.
He just plays people that don't talk and do cool backflips and stuff.
Hey, Dan, isn't this hilarious? What
No.
we're seeing right now with Jar Jar, like shooting people on accident with a thing stuck on his. Yeah, that's hilarious. I'm laughing so hard.
It's
No, what would be
hilarious that you
funny is
pointed
if
out
he.
sarcastically how hilarious it is. That's why I'm laughing.
Man, see, it's really ironic. See, because R2D2 later on is gonna help Anakin Skywalker's son, Luke Skywalker, go to Dagobah to find Yoda. But see, Anakin Skywalker used him in the first place to shoot a bunch of random ships.
And I love how Anakin like is the one that blows
That's
up this ship, and it's completely by accident. It makes the other pilots look completely incompetent.
yeah. Things happen in this movie because the script says they do, not because anybody actually did anything on purpose to make the things happen. And and I'm not saying that you can never in a movie, because I know I complain a lot about things that seem contrived, things that are convenient, etc. But it's not that convenient things in real life don't happen. It's that when it happens, you have to talk about the fact that it happened, and then even that doesn't always excuse it, right? Like it's just it's got to not seem like like, oh, we wrote ourselves into a corner, so let's try spinning. That's a neat trick.
A lot of this architecture reminds me of in the Naboo Palace of classical Greek and Roman architecture. I think that look is really cool.
It's cool to see two Jedi fighting another guy at once. I don't think we really had that much before this.
No, we did
What
not.
what it what is this room for? Like
It's supposed to be
it's
like a power generator room.
I mean, but I think it's more just there because we had a room like that at the end of Return of the Jedi, right? And we gotta have you gotta have that. Like, what is it? It looks really elaborate, right?
Yes, it does.
Like they probably spend half of their government's yearly budget just to clean this place.
That's why the tax dispute happened. They're like, we can't pay for this if the Trade Federation taxes us more. See, we're not thinking about why the climax of the movie happened here. It's a come up full circle.
We have to spend so much money on janitor. The janitors are bleeding us dry, Dad.
I think the double-bladed lightsaber is one of the coolest things to come out of the prequels. I don't know.
It
I
really
always
is.
really, really loved the double-bladed lightsaber.
I'm with you, and I'm the first person to complain now about gimmicky lightsabers. Like, oh man, we had the double bladed one, so like everything's got to be a different lightsaber now. But yeah, that was super cool.
Like whenever I play Star Wars RPGs, I always roll a character with a double-bladed lightsaber. Like when I would play Knights of the Old Republic, and stuff like that. You could choose what kind of lightsaber you have. You have a single one, wield two, or have a double-bladed. I always go double-bladed because they're so cool.
See, I would go with a lightsaber that like sliced, diced, and made julienne fries, and it had like a built-in hollow projector in the middle of it, and it did my taxes, and it had a replicator that could make me food, and yeah,
You just got
just
to
did
add a few
everything.
more attachments to the Inquisitor's lightsaber, and you could dab it.
Yeah, well, I am convinced that the Inquisitor in Star Wars Rebels has the ability to fly like Inspector Gadget. I'm
That
convinced of it.
would
He
be
hasn't
awesome.
he hasn't done it yet, but I'm just waiting for him to stick his arm up in the air and start flying.
Imagine if he had like a helmet attachment that he just put the lightsaber on top of and he just flew away with it spinning on his head.
He's like go Inquisitor propeller.
Na, 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 na.
Hey, Dan, why aren't you laughing at this hilarious scene?
Oh god. These scenes I just kind of like my eyes gloss over because it's just not exciting at
Yep.
all.
There's just nothing. Who cares? I mean, importantly, it's Gungans versus robots. We
A race we know nothing about against incompetent robots.
What are the stakes? Like,
Uh,
man, you're not making any kind of sacrifice in anybody. I'm pretty sure not one of them gets killed.
no,
I don't think
I don't think any of them do.
I don't think a single Gungan was killed in the making of this movie. I mean, in that fight. Okay,
I've
Anakin's trying
heard
to
that
stop. And you know why Anakin stopped here? It's not because of his like brilliant ingenuity or anything. It's just because the script needed him to stop right there. That's
exactly. Um, Speaking about the kid who plays Anakin, I've heard that he has great animosity for Star Wars fans now and hates these in this movie because a
yep.
lot of Star Wars fans hate the prequels and berate him about his performance in this movie, and I feel really bad. Like that's
I do
awful.
too. I mean, but it's not his fault that Lucas decided to start before the story starts.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
And
really, like,
like,
what could any kid actor have really done with this role with what was on the page? I mean, you got Natalie Portman, who we've seen in other movies just tear it up and do some really good stuff, and yeah, I like her in V for Vendetta a lot. And
oh yeah,
then like she looks like a terrible actress in this, so it's so hard for kid actors without a lot of experience to without great directing and great writing to really do great stuff on screen. Are we surprised? You're right. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not
right.
gonna blame him.
And think about it from that kid's perspective. You're that age and you get the offer to be in Star Wars Episode 1. Who's not going to take that job no matter what the script looks like?
Yeah,
From it, like,
yeah,
I mean, I would have. And Qui-Gon just died there. You
yeah.
feeling anything?
Not so much. I mean, the music is telling me to, and I'm trying really hard, get up the gumption. But
It didn't hit you in the feels?
it did not hit me in the feels. You know what I want to do? I want to finally. I've always wanted to get on Wheel of Fortune, Dan. And no, not really. But I'm going to make this joke anyway. I like to be on Wheel of Fortune just so that in the middle of a puzzle, I can look at Pat Sajak and say, "Let's try spinning. That's a good trick." You want to buy a vowel? No, let's try spinning. That's a good trick.
The Federations are pretty incompetent too. They didn't check the throne for weapons after they took it over.
Yeah, it seems like they would have taught you that in cop school or military or whatever they are. You know.
Their
Whoa, did you
trade
see?
federation
Did
was
you see Ewan McGregor? He's like bouncing up and down, getting ready to go after this guy. He's about to box him or something. That was it's like if you blink you miss it, but just right before the cut, that was a bit of a strange choice. He's like, I'm gonna get him. Here we go. I don't
I
know.
think some of the directing of this fight is actually pretty good, like the
But
choreography and stuff.
yeah. I'm with you.
Like some of the shots where it zoomed in close on them for a few seconds there, it looks pretty good.
I also like that the Force stuff in this movie is a lot more subtle than it is later. Right, where Darth Maul has slight force pushes he does and stuff, but they're not like throwing the universe at each other.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the worst offenses are in stuff like I don't know if you've ever seen trailers or played any of the Force Unleashed games where you can literally like move
Yeah,
Star Destroyers with the Force. It's like this is terrible. Like
going a little too
you
far.
should not
I
be able
just
to
don't
do
know
things
why.
Darth Vader can't do as his apprentice, you know?
That's a really good point. Like, why is Starkiller able to do all this stuff? I don't understand that. Like, why are we making such a big deal out of Anakin Skywalker and how he's like the most powerful thing in the universe when this guy could probably juggle planets like 1960s Superman?
Yeah, exactly. I love that guy's reaction. He's just like, we didn't hit it.
It didn't hit it. No, actually, Anakin, that is not pod racing. Just throwing that. Just
By
throwing that.
definition.
Yeah, it's like now this is pod. No, no, it's not. You're in
I love
fact.
how the pilots are all like, "Yeah, we won. No, you guys contributed very little to this."
Okay, I know nobody can see us right now because we're just doing this on audio, but I just want to mention that I have just noticed that Dan Torrey has Mario pants.
I do.
Dan Torrey has Mario. He's got Mario World sweatpants.
They're my
That's
pajamas. They're
that's
pretty awesome,
awesome.
aren't they?
Yeah.
Mario riding on Yoshi.
Okay, so when you get to a scene in a movie where the good guys just beat the bad guys and there's a million of them and they're all cheering, I want to be thinking about possibly considering the possibility of cheering as well.
Yeah, but you're
But I
so
don't.
wrapped up in the tension of this, aren't you? That's why you're not
Oh,
cheering.
yes, that's the reason. Wait, what happened? Oh, he got stabbed. Oh, okay, that's what happened. Okay. I think that was somewhat of a weird choice.
Having
Was
Darth Maul
that
be
like
cut in half?
no, not showing it? Was it
Yes.
because I mean, like, well, in the original trilogy, we stabbed people and showed it. Are we really that worried about the kids in this? We don't use blood anywhere in Star Wars. Did we really have to do a cut to his face and then cut to just and then he falls and it's just implied? Okay, I mean, yeah, okay, so we know what happened, but I'm just saying it does feel a little awkward where the camera's positioned.
Especially since we saw Qui-Gon get stabbed with a lightsaber a couple of scenes ago.
Yeah, so it's not a choice that really I know where it came from. I'm not sure where that choice came from. I also still don't know why that room has to be that big and how anybody can clean it. Yeah, yeah. This movie is really superfluous, Dan.
Yeah, I feel like not all that much happened.
Yeah. Also, this movie has something in common with Star Trek Nemesis, and that is that both of them have a character named Viceroy, and the plots in both of them don't make a great deal of sense. And the Viceroy is like a bad person.
And is the Viceroy grossly incompetent in that movie too?
Not really. He doesn't get a lot to do. He pretty much just hits Riker in the face a lot.
Oh. I like that subtle little reference where he calls him young Skywalker. It's pretty
Oh yeah,
cool.
that's good. Still reaching for positive things to say, Dan.
Yeah. If anything, I think Ian McDiarmid gives the most consistently good performance with what he's given in all of the movies. He always seems like he's having a good time playing this role.
My favorite thing is when you get to Revenge of the Sith and he's just laughing maniacally the entire movie.
I love when he's like, no,
No,
no.
no, no.
He's just hamming it up. It's great.
Yep, that was pretty great.
I think I like Revenge of the Sith a little bit more than this one. I think Attack of the Clones is clearly the most boring and terrible of them. But I don't know. I think I find Revenge of the Sith a little bit more watchable. I think the pacing's a little bit better.
I agree with you, but I don't know how much credit I want to give to the storytelling in that for that, just because it has to get to a certain place by the end of it. So a lot of that is kind of just by virtue of what the material is. Uh,
Right. I just mean that it's not as much like boring dialogue, people standing around not doing anything. Like there's at least something action driven going on in a lot of the
I
scenes, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, I mean, as far as being entertained, sure, but just like I don't know, just for like what I watch stories for, I don't know what I dislike more. Something that's just really boring and I don't care about anything that's happening, or something that would be extremely fascinating, but I'm uh, as an audience member played as a sap, and I'm supposed to see something that's really not sophisticated at all as incredibly sophisticated. Just as far as like the plotting and scheming and manipulation, and like it's all really really obvious and surface, and my main character has to be a complete moron to not know that he's being duped.
Yeah.
And all of that, and also just feels kind of cynical in places. I don't know.
I don't know, like I don't really care for any of these movies, so like the one that
Yeah.
has the most people swinging lightsabers in it is the most fun for me to watch. That's the only reason why I like Revenge of the Sith a little bit more.
Well, once again, I think I'm still kind of drawn a little bit to like the aesthetics and the atmosphere of this one.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, for
So
sure.
this is a world I would love to embody exactly the way it is if I could hang out with some cool people who like I understood them and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Da 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 done. Woo!
Anakin in his Padawan
Anakin
garb,
got
and he
it.
looks sad or something.
Yeah, he's like, oh man, this is so much worse than being a slave.
He's like, I have to stand here with this braid and robe on. It's all Obi-Wan's fault.
There's a lot of standing and looking at things in this movie. I mean, like, don't you think that a lot of I
Okay.
just get the sense from a lot of these actors that like They don't know why they're there or what they're supposed to do, you know? Like throughout these. There's a lot of places in this movie where I'm just like, I don't think you or the script knows what you're supposed to be doing right now. You
I want to know
know?
what that orb is.
Yeah, what yeah. What
Peace.
It's the peace orb. It came from the prophets from Deep Space Nine. Or maybe it's an infinity gem. In which case,
No,
the
you know
only
what it
way he's
is?
going to be able to hold it for much longer is if everybody else grabs onto him. Oh.
That is the dump that Darth Maul looked like he was taking when they zoomed in on his face
No.
after he got cut in half.
No, we don't make jokes like that on my channel, Dan. That's not what we know. That is not what we do here, Dan.
We can't say dump.
Well, you can say it, but it's just not very classy, you know? It's Oh, Dan. No, it's just mental pictures, you know? I don't need that. I don't need that kind of vivid imagery right at the end of a movie that I don't really like very much. Well, this was fun to chat over, I suppose.
Yeah, it
It's not
was.
like, it's not unwatchable. It just I don't know why I'm supposed to care about anything.
Yeah, I
That's
mean it's
all.
boring in some parts. Like there's
Yeah.
large parts of the movie, especially like the talking scenes on Tatooine. They're real draggy and boring. But the action is cool to look at.
Well, that's the thing is that everybody is qualified for the most part to be there and do what they're doing, except for the guy who's writing it,
Yeah.
and he created the thing. I mean, that's the thing is that when you're George Lucas and you have this empire. Everybody's gonna let you do whatever you want to do. I mean, like it's kind of just you know it's hard to have that much power and that much control over something like this, and to be able to look at things with any perspective. I mean, like I feel like I can really sympathize with him on that point. I don't know how you are George Lucas and it doesn't change you.
Yeah, it's almost like he fell to the dark side.
Yeah, you're not the first person to say that.
And we're getting
Well,
another taste of this song. They did use it again
yeah,
in the
cool.
credits.
Okay. But they did but you're saying that they didn't use it in any of the other movies.
Right, yes. Yes.
Okay.
No, there was another song used for the Revenge of the Sith duel called I believe it's Battle of the Heroes. It's like dun, 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 dun. It's a pretty good song. I like it. I probably gave you no idea what it actually sounds like, but
No, that's
it's a
cool.
good
This
song.
is well, according to you, this is the only time I'm ever going to get to listen to the song again. So, well, I mean, not
Just
ever.
focus.
I own the movie. I own the
And
soundtrack. I bought that.
yeah, there you go.
Star Wars is interesting because have you ever noticed this? There's music behind almost every inch of Star Wars. Like there are hardly any
Mm.
scenes where there's no music playing behind it. When you listen to the episode one soundtrack, it takes 2 discs to get it all in, and they put out this deluxe set that was like every single piece of score, and it's as long as the movie.
Yeah, it's
Or it's
interesting.
close. It's close to as long as the movie. I'm not saying there's no places where there's no music. There's not much.
There's always like little music cues at certain points of dialogue when there's no music playing continuously through the background. They use music a lot.
And then there's like transition score, right? Like when you go from
That's
scene to
true,
another
yes.
scene, and they do the transition wipe effects or whatever.
Yes. Yes. Of course. This movie could have used some Bane.
Well, then it would have had more things in common with Star Trek Nemesis.
Oh yeah, that's true. He's Shinzon in that, isn't he?
Yeah. See, I was gonna make that joke earlier, but I figured before the credits were out, somebody would mention Bane. I was pretty positive it would come out. Well, and then we
We
know that
always
there's a
do.
Darth, and then we know there's a Darth Bane.
Darth Bane and
Darth
Bane from
Bane.
Rises is a lot like Darth Vader, which makes that even funnier.
Yeah, I know. You know, I did a video comparing and contrasting them
That's right. That's right.
in the Bane voice, where Bane was talking about what he likes and dislikes about Darth Vader.
He has a lovely, lovely voice.
It's a lovely voice. I don't know how he eats, but then again, I don't know how I eat either. One of the things, I guess I should mention this real quick because this is something that Eric told me that if we ever did commentaries on these, I had to bring up, is the the Jedi in this, especially Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, are wearing stuff that's supposed to be, you know, garb that's supposed to be like the traditional Jedi garb, but you got the sense in the original Star Wars movies that that's not Jedi garb. That's what people on Tatooine wear because it's what you wear on a desert.
Yeah, that's kind of true. Luke
I
wears a
never
similar
thought of
kind
that
of tunic
before.
without the overrobe on
Yeah,
Tatooine. That's true.
yeah. Well, and so does and so does Obi-Wan, but like I didn't think it was because he was a Jedi, because nobody knows he's a Jedi. So why is he wearing traditional Jedi garb? So like that's kind of silly if that's true,
That
right?
is silly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because like if Obi-Wan just walked around in traditional Jedi garb, he's not doing a very good job of hiding in plain sight.
No, he's sure not. He's in plain sight, but he's not doing the hiding part. He's,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
Well, anyway, I guess we're all finished.
I guess.
Wait, what? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Okay, so because I had my audio down quite a bit, because obviously we were doing a commentary. My subtitles right at the very end, at the end of the credits, say breathing. Was
Oh,
there
interesting.
was there like a Darth Vader breathing or something? I'm
Yeah,
gonna go
my
back and
audio is
listen to
down
that.
really low too.
It said breathing. I wonder what that was.
It's
Huh.
probably Darth Vader, I would imagine.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm gonna find out right after we get finished recording. Anyway, well, everybody, thanks a lot for listening to our commentary on Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace. We're going to do an Attack of the Clones commentary sometime in the very near future. And in the meantime, I am Captain Logan,
I am Dan.
and we will see you again very soon.